just emotional. I feel like she's here. I feel like Susie's here. I mean, this was the last place that I saw her. Never could I have imagined that anything like that was about to happen. There was a knock on my front door. I was alone at home. It was 3 people, all dressed in black suits, big guys that grabbed me and tortured me. They say, "You gotta stop talking or you're gonna be dead." You wanna know how they tortured me? You want me to tell you?
Let's talk about the link, the footage of you wearing this link, and it seems like you suddenly disappear and then reappear. It feels unbelievable. Can I ask you, is that footage unedited? Is that real?
What the hell is going on, guys? This interview is something that's been a long time coming. If you've been watching the channel for over a year, you might remember I did a 2-part series on this case. Dr. Jonathan Reed, the alien in the freezer, 1996. This is understandably one of the most controversial and compelling, but also unbelievable cases I think that exists. And I know that many people already have their minds up about this. Some people think he's a complete fraud. Other people completely believe him. I know that going into this, but for me, my fascination with this topic is wanting to find out for myself and wanting to speak to the people and get as close to it as I can to make my own mind up about how I feel. So I hope you guys do the same thing. Let me know. I'm very interested to see how you feel about the Dr. Jonathan Reed case at the end of this podcast. Get in the comments. Be respectful to Jonathan and to myself. Let's keep an open mind. Remember to subscribe if you haven't. My name is Josh. Welcome to Polarity, and I hope you enjoy this interview.
I have to say, Dr. Jonathan Reed, I've been wanting to speak to you for a long time, ever since I kind of came across your case. So it's a pleasure, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. I appreciate that, and I hope your audience has a chance to get to know me a little better.
Yeah, because you're someone who, I guess, in this space of aliens and UFOs, there are a lot of people who have had their own encounters and stories, and they're on lots of podcasts, they're here and there popping up, but you're not really like that. Like, you've been a little bit of an enigma. At least I know you've done a few interviews, but you're not really someone we see or hear much from. So I guess, why is that, and why have you decided to do this now?
Well, when I first came out back in 1998, I came out with Art Bell, who was a radio talk show host who had about estimated 20 to 25 million listeners. And that was the first place I spoke publicly. And after that, it was a landslide of people wanting to speak to me and hear the story, and on and on. And I understand that. And for about the first 5 years, I did the circuit. I went on there and talked to everybody and went to a lot of conferences and got to know who was what in the industry. Because prior to this event in 1996, I didn't know anybody in ufology or anything to do with that. In fact, I wasn't even interested in science fiction. You know, I just wasn't. It just wasn't part of my life. So I had to become accustomed to who was who and who to talk to and who to trust. And, you know, it was a big deal. It was a big learning process. As you know, there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of kind of strange people out there. So I had to weed through all that, but that was my process. And I spoke with Art Bell about 7 times, 7 different interviews, prior to the internet having any video or any pictures. So this was way back when. And then once about halfway through dealing with him, he got video and he got pictures, and then we put up a bunch of my pictures, and which I think you have a lot of that. So what people need to know is who I was. I was a doctor, developmental psychiatrics, child development, pediatric studies. I went to San Diego State University, graduated there with an education degree. I transferred to UCLA into their pre-med program, graduated there with a PhD in psychology. Then I went to the University of Washington Med School and ended up working in their medical facility for about 6 years. And before I actually was practicing, actually out of school. So then I worked there, great facility, University of Washington Medical Center. Um, Worked there until 1996 when this event happened. And after this happened, uh, everything went upside down in my life. Everything
So,
strange happened.
so, and I'm going to ask a few things that I feel like
Yes, sir.
a lot of people who have commented on this case that that there are a few things that a lot of people get hung up on. One of them that I remember seeing is a lot of people were claiming that you're not even a doctor or you're not even using your real name, things like this. So, are these things that you've had to explain in the past as
Well,
well?
I've had to deal with it. I haven't had to explain it. But what I want to say is when I wrote the book, my book, Link, An Extraterrestrial Odyssey, available at Amazon Kindle. When I wrote the book, I needed a co writer to help me because I had no idea how to write a book or how to chronicle all this. So, some people gave me the name of a guy named Robert Wraith, who was living in California at the time, who was a ghost writer and had written a lot of journals, and he knew what he was doing. So he flew up to Seattle, met me, sat down with me, and I told him basically what I'm going to tell you, how it all started, how it happened, and whether or not he wanted to be involved. He did. I was lucky. He was a great guy. He has since died. Um, and I'm halfway lost without him, but he was just my friend. He traveled around the world with me talking about this case, which is absurd. The whole case is absurd.
Let's get into that. And I want to say that there are three, I guess, kind of three main pillars of this story that I think are of big interest to me and most people. And that is one, obviously, the alien being itself, this dark black obelisk that you saw during the encounter as well,
Right?
and then this link bracelet artifact. So obviously, I want to dig into each of those sort of individually.
Okay.
But if you could, for anyone who maybe hasn't seen your story or hasn't watched the new documentary Contact in the Woods yet, if you could tell the story, and we'll
Yes,
kind of pick at it as you go through it.
absolutely.
I'm sure you've heard the saying that you are what you eat. I don't know if I really agree with that. I think you are what you consume. Because of this, I think we need to be far more conscious about the things that we allow into our mind. Because if you're still tuning in to mainstream unconscious outlets, all of that messaging is going into your subconscious mind and you don't even realize that it's happening. I think humanity is going through a big change right now. There's definitely a big collective shift in our consciousness and our awareness of ourselves. And I think a lot of you guys can feel that, but a lot of you are still consuming mainstream, unconscious, fear-based media. You're now subconsciously creating a fear-based life for yourself because it all starts in the subconscious, right? And this is why I choose Gaia. Whether you've just watched Disclosure Day and you want to learn more about the complex, multi-layered reality that we live in, the interdimensional realms that seem to be interacting with us, or maybe you're coming out here to the beautiful mountains of Sedona and you want to learn more about spirituality, yoga, meditation. It has it all and much, much more. Concepts and ideas that are going to help you expand your awareness and enrich your mind. And the best part is you can check it out for free. Go to the link pinned at the top of the comment section and you can get yourself 7 days free. So the next time you're thinking about grabbing the remote and watching some Netflix, go and check out Gaia. It's free and it'll expand your mind.
1996, October 15th, I decided to take the afternoon off and go for a hike in the woods in my area, Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington, Cascade Mountains. I'd been there many times before, walking with my dog on a abandoned logging trail that was kind of halfway overgrown, but a great place to take your dog for a walk. I had a golden retriever, 7 years old, about 80 pounds, 80 pounds of love and joy. She was a great dog, very obedient. I took her to work with me. She loved the patients, the kids, good chance to relax your patients. Anyway, we took off about, little before noon, drove about 45 minutes to the woods area. I parked my Jeep where I had parked it before. Like I said, we had done this many times before in this same area. Um, this was a little late in the year, so there weren't a lot of other people around. I think there were two cars where I parked my Jeep. We got out, started walking, had been walking for about an hour, and Susie would occasionally run off barking, chasing squirrels and raccoons and whatever else. But then she'd come back. She was off the leash. Like I said, a good place to walk your dog. And in doing so, she had a chance to run free, being off the leash, which is good for dogs. I believe they need this. But anyway, she would run out, bark a few times, and run back to me, and everything was cool. She'd done this a couple times during that hour that we'd walked, and we saw a couple of deer, a couple of raccoons, and everything was fine, just like always. Well, she took off running, and I lost sight of her because of the underbrush. There's a lot of heavy underbrush in this area. I mean, this is a mountain area. This is not a, park, but it's part of the national forest. Anyway, I heard her barking normally. You get to know your dog's voice if you've ever had a dog for some time. You know when they're happy, when they're just exploring, but you also know when something changes in the tone of their voice. You can actually tell there's a difference. And I
For sure.
could tell there was a difference. Something was bothering her. She was not just barking normally, cheerfully, and her barking started to become aggressive, almost growling and wailing a little bit, like something was even maybe attacking her. So I ran up the path, called her a few times. She didn't come, but I could still hear her barking, and I couldn't see her. I could not find her. And I went up to this little rise and I called her, and I knew she was close. She had to be close because I could hear that she was very close. So I ran down the side of this little hill, kind of through the underbrush. And as I landed like 6 feet, I was face to face with her and this creature. We'll call it a creature. This creature was throwing my dog with one hand back and forth like this, as fast as you could possibly do it. So fast that it was like a paint shaker, if you know what that is. It's vibrating really,
Yeah.
really fast. And I couldn't make out what this thing was, but all I could see my dog going through the air as fast as you can imagine. So fast I couldn't visually actually see her clearly. But nevertheless, there it was. And as I watched, I mean, this is all happening within about 10 seconds. As I watched, he stopped throwing her back and forth. He had a black suit on that was almost like spandex, which later I was able to look at closely. But part of the arm of this suit that he had covered his hands, his arms, all in one piece, almost like it was sprayed on. Part of this expanded up on the top of my dog's head, and he began ripping my dog's head in half, tearing her backbone and her head right off of her body. It was a horrible thing to say. She was wailing and barking and screaming at this time.
After the dog's being thrown back and forth,
Yes.
as this sort of appendage came out of the suit, I've heard you explain this before. It's almost like the suit like morphed or grew into an arm or
Yes.
something. Where was the dog when this is happening? So the shaking had stopped?
It's hanging. It's hanging in the air because he had a hold of her neck. Okay, as far as I could see, this appendage grew out from his arm, from his suit, was all black, almost like liquid. Grabbed the top of her head and started ripping it apart. I mean, as fast as I'm saying it, it was happening. and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was just mortified. I was so afraid for her and for me. I mean, I was scared to death, and it ripped her apart. And as she began to fall, part of her body fall, it was like it was being sucked into herself, almost like it was caving into her body. And then all of a sudden, it was white ash falling down to the ground, white powder, like ash from your fireplace. It was just mortifying. It was just unbelievable. And
Have you ever over the years, because I'm, it's been 30 years now, have you ever come to some kind of conclusion or idea on what happened there, like
yes,
specifically with the dog?
yes, I have come to some conclusion. I have come to some understanding. But you need to know something. As this was happening, like I said, it was seconds in its happening. I lunged forward in rage, and I had picked up a branch that was laying on the path that was about 6 feet long and about the size of a baseball bat. And I took it and swung it as hard as I could at this thing, hitting it in the head, knocking it down, splitting its skull, blood spraying everywhere, and it fell to the ground. Not moving, not breathing, not making any sound. And I fell too, exactly at the same moment, like something had hit me, like something had come out of the air and hit me, knocking me to
Where
the ground,
where
making
did
me
you feel
lose.
like you felt like you were struck by something? Is this sort of like in your mind? Did it feel like a hit in the chest? Like where did you feel like
It
you were
felt
struck?
like I was hit in my whole body at one moment, causing me to lose all control of my bowels, my bladder. I couldn't breathe. I could barely breathe at all. I mean, it was like something had crushed me at the same moment. And I fell to the ground. I mean, on the ground, on my chest, on the ground. I couldn't get up. I had no muscle control in my legs or my arms. It was terrifying because I didn't know what had happened. I had no idea what had happened. All I knew is I hit it and this crippling disease hit me. So I was going out of my mind trying to breathe. I couldn't breathe. It was like something was pressing on my chest. No muscle control at all. And like I said, I was a mess. My bladder, my bowels had exploded into my clothes. So I was an absolute mess. I couldn't
When you
get up.
say when you say no muscle control when you were on the floor, do you mean like you were felt paralyzed or you just had no strength?
Like all the strength in my muscles was gone. Like as hard as I could push up, there was no strength in my legs or my waist or my arms. Like all of the muscle had gone limp all at once, completely limp. I mean, I tried to crawl away from that moment and I barely could push myself away. I was, 4 feet in front of his head, his skull that was broke open, hole in his head, 2 inches, bleeding all over. And I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to deal with that. It was terrible. It was a terrible moment. So when you say, what do I think happened? Well, years go by. I'm talking to people all over the world, and some other people who had had similar experiences said, well, something in the area, maybe his suit was a defense mechanism. And when you hit him, it erupted and hit you, knocking you to the ground. That's the only thing I can assume. I don't know that. I can't verify that, but a lot of people have told me that. Now, you have to remember, I didn't know anything about this. I knew nothing about alien life or what people thought or assumed or had found out over the years. So I needed people to tell me what they thought. And so when I started talking about this, that's what I would say. I would say people help me deal with this. If you had ideas or conclusions about what may have happened, please tell me. And they did, all over the place.
Were you getting conflicting responses?
No, not really. I would say 75% were positive, very helpful, very concerned. 25% were negative, like normal. You've got always get people who just want their 5 minutes on the radio or, in a text message. But for the most part, people were very helpful, very understanding, because it was obvious that I didn't know what was going on.
Mm,
I can only tell you what happened to me. I can't tell you what's happened to other people.
mm,
I'm not an expert on this at all. In fact, the only thing I'm an expert is my case. That's it. I can only tell
mm.
you what happened to me. I mean, a
That's
lot
one thing that I found really interesting as well is the fact that this happened in 1996, and it was only a couple of years prior to that. There was a case in Rua, Zimbabwe, where there was a landing at a kid's
with
primary
all
school.
the children. Yes, I've talked to
Yes,
John Mack about that. He informed me what he thought about that, all his evidence of talking with the people there, and
yeah.
I
The
believe it.
descriptions are the same. Like, because they talk about short childlike beings wearing these black skin suits, and
Right,
that's kind
right.
of identical to, I
Now,
guess, what you've seen.
a lot of people say, what kind of entity was this? Well, I can only tell you what other people have told me. I took pictures of this, I took video of this, and I brought the body home from the woods. And I only did that because I wanted help. I wanted other people to help me deal with this. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what I killed. I thought I was going to be in trouble for murdering something. I mean, at first I thought it was a child until it was face to face with me 3 feet away where I couldn't get away from it. And I realized it wasn't a mask, it wasn't a costume, and it was a real living creature
So let's go back to when you said you were on the floor, you couldn't really breathe.
on the ground.
There's this, yes, yeah, next to it after you struck it.
Yes.
There's this footage of you, well, not of you, but taken from you frantically scrambling around the woods, looking at the body, looking at this black object that you found next to it.
Come on, work. Come on.
How long after?
Probably 45 minutes before I could
Okay.
really move at all. So I was laying, like I said, face to face with this thing, and I didn't want to be there. I tried to get up and I would fall down. I tried to lean against a tree and I would fall down. I tore my shirt on my shoulder against the rough bark of a tree. Anyway, finally, I said to myself, I've got some water. I had a canteen of water in my pack, my day pack. I had a few other things. I had some dog rations. I had a knife, just a small pocket knife. I had a thermal blanket and my cameras. That's all I had. That's all I would normally take with me. I was an amateur photographer. I took pictures of everything, almost everywhere I would go. Had a 35 millimeter Nikon camera that was an auto shutter speed that was also manually adjustable. A good lens, good fast lens, because people say, how could you take such clear pictures, when you were so distraught? Well, the camera did the job. All I had to do is point and shoot, and basically it would set its own shutter speed. The shutter speed that it was taking was between a half second and a second. So it was a little slow as far as the shutter speed, but I propped myself up on my arms on the ground to hold the camera. I mean, I knew how to take pictures. So I knew I was dealing with my own body being distraught and breathing. I just kept trying to slow my breathing down. And as I went to my pack to get the water, I had to take the cameras out of the pack to get to the canteen. So they were there. I saw them. And I was so messed up thinking about this whole incident. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was going to be able to get out of the woods. I thought maybe I was going to die of this crippling sickness. And so I'm sitting there drinking the water, trying to calm down. And again, I'm crawling around. I'm not standing up. I couldn't stand up. So I was crawling to my pack, drank the water, and I'm looking at my cameras in front of me because I had just taken them out and I thought, my cameras, I know how to work those. I know how to take pictures. Maybe I should take pictures of what's going on in front of me. Maybe none of it will come out because it's not really happening. Maybe it's an illusion in my mind. Maybe I'm suffering from an illusion. Maybe my dog got killed by a bear or something. So that was my thought. I started trying to talk myself out of it. And I took the pictures thinking, well, this will be good. This will prove to me that you're just going nuts and there will be nothing on the pictures. So I took all the film I had, which is like 24 shots of the 35 millimeter film. It was a dark canopy, so I had to shoot at a slower shutter speed, wide open aperture, but I took all those pictures. Then I took my video camera. I had a little tiny Nikon / Sony video camera, one of the first little ones that came out. It was available. They call it like an 8 millimeter, but it was small. It's about that big. It had a viewfinder that was 1 inch square, black and white. Barely could see it, as I held it up to myself. But I started taking pictures and I started running and I'd stumble, I'd fall, I'd get up, I'd continue to take the pictures, trying to breathe slower, trying to calm myself down. But you can see in the video that I wasn't very calm. But I would get to the point where I would try to hold it as stable as I could, sitting on my knees and holding it. But the closer that I got to this black obelisk, is what I call it, was 12 feet long, about 2.5 feet high, and about 3.5 feet wide. And it was anchored to the air. It was not touching the ground. It had no wheels, no landing gear, no seams, nothing. It was like a great big piece of granite. It felt like stone because I actually touched it. I fell against it, actually, when I finally went over where it was, when I realized there was a harmonic tone drifting through the air, drifting through this whole area. And I first
You
thought,
could hear something?
yeah, I could hear this harmonic tone, this low tone, ebbing sound. And it was so acute that I could almost feel it inside me, in my backbone. It was so low, this low sound.
Is there something that you would say it sort of sounded like, something that we would know as an example?
Like the lowest bass note you could imagine coming from a bass guitar. And it's the only analogy I can give you, but extremely low, almost to the point where you didn't hear it, but you felt it.
Yeah.
And it's going everywhere. I mean, like I said, I started to hear it. I was 75 feet away from it. And I was walking and crawling and getting up and falling down. And finally I got over where it was, and it was sitting, in the air, 3 feet off the ground. I didn't realize there was nothing under it. I slipped on the ferns because it was at an angle, like it's sitting here, and it was at an angle in a little valley. And I slipped and fell and grabbed up to stop me from falling and touched it. And it was cold, like dry ice. It actually ripped the skin off the inside of my hand because it was that cold. I don't know if you've ever felt dry ice, but it sticks to your skin. Mm-hmm. In the moment that I touched it, I can't tell you what happened, but for a half a second, I was inside of something. I was taken from outside to inside. It felt like a huge room, like an airplane hangar. And all I could see, it was black, and I could see across the way some lights, a couple blue and couple green lights and white lights way far away. I mean, like, if you could imagine 500 feet in front of you. And then within a half second of that happening, I was back outside sitting underneath it.
So
So
it's like the contact with this object basic changed your surroundings. Do you feel like it just changed your perception, or you were actually
I feel like it
temporarily somewhere
absorbed
else?
me. It absorbed me, probably thinking that I was the little guy, the alien, maybe looking for something breathing and something moving around because the alien wasn't moving. It was totally gone. I thought dead. And I was the only thing moving. So maybe it assumed I was it.
Okay.
And then once it realized I wasn't, I was back outside. That was like a half a second. Just
Right. So
just
so you touching it
yes.
when you went to this other place, could you still feel this object, the
No.
coldness of it on your hand?
No. No.
So and the
No.
object wasn't in this other place that you were taken to?
Not that I knew of. It wasn't, I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. I felt like I was in a black room the size of a airplane hangar. And then it
Wow.
spit me back out. I mean, instantly, not even time enough for me to realize. I mean, I seriously, less than a second is what it felt like. So I can't tell you what it actually was. I don't know. I can just explain what it felt like. Anyway, I was back outside, and that's when I scurried up the hill, got my water, got my cameras, and started taking pictures of all of this area. Again, Josh, I can't explain enough how sick I was and how worried I was that I was going to pass out from stress or hyperventilation. I was breathing so hard, I was starting to feel like I was passing out. And that's a terrible feeling. I mean, it's almost like a death rattle happening inside you. And that was what I was concerned with. I was now concerned with my own living, through this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in my head, I thought, how am I ever going to get back to my Jeep? Because it took an hour to get to this point, and I was
So you're an hour away from where you parked your car?
right, right, where I had parked my
Yeah.
Jeep. And I don't want to make a mistake because when I say car, people go, oh, I thought you had a Jeep. No, it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Jeep. It was a
Yes.
Jeep.
Yeah.
And a used Jeep, by the way. Anyway, I thought about it. I thought, I gotta find some place to put this thing, to put the body, because I want to be able to bring somebody else back who knows what to do, who can help me, because I needed help. I heard a few other sounds in the area, like that harmonic tone would change a little bit, so it never stopped, but it changed. It became more pleasant, the tone. And I have no idea what that was other than I felt it was alive, like a machine would be alive. That's all I can think of. People have said, well, was it a ship? I've never said it was a ship because it was small. I mean, he would have fit into it like a coffin, but I think it was something else. I think it was like a doorway, like
Like
a
a
door.
like a portal or something.
Right, exactly. Between one place and another place, maybe a whole different dimension. That's what
Mm.
other people have speculated. Uh, but I want to state that I tried to move it. I'm 200 pounds, and I pushed on it and almost stood on the front end of it, and it wouldn't move a fraction of an inch. So it wasn't hovering.
So this is after the first time you tapped it and
Yes,
you got
yes,
transported?
yeah,
And you didn't have the same effect when you
no,
touched it again?
no. And I ripped out all the ferns that were underneath it so I could take a clear picture so that you could see there was nothing underneath it. It wasn't tied up. It didn't have any appendages. It didn't have any ropes or landing gear. It wasn't hanging from the trees. It was anchored to the air. I mean, you can see the surface of the black obelisk, that it had a density to it, but it was almost like, um, what do they call the carbon fiber? It was almost looked like carbon fiber, like it had a depth to it, but there was nothing on the surface. It was completely smooth. I mean, it was beautiful, actually. If you really want to know, I mean, it was like a sculpture almost.
Was there any kind of anomalies with the way light was interacting with the object? Like, was light shining off of it? Was it absorbing the light?
The only thing I know that was really strange is after I had gone into it, come out of it, was on the ground, kind of moving around, taking a couple of pictures of it, and tried to move it, I noticed that it absorbed the sound of my hand hitting the surface of it. There was no sound. I mean, I was slapping it, you know, to get some kind of resonation of sound, but there was none. It was I don't know if it absorbed the sound, if it prevented the sound, I don't know. But that was the light was it was clear enough so I could see the surface, I could see the lines of the creases in it. It had six sides, six total sides to it. So, and it had a flat front nose and a flat back end. Some people think it was sharp, but it's not. It was flat in the front. I mean, one end was longer than the other. In other words, the front
Yeah,
end was long, the back end
like a
was short.
wedge, like almost like a door wedge kind of thing.
Exactly, like a marquee diamond laying on its side. That's pretty much all I know. Now, I will say, I came back the next day with my friend who was 100% gung ho on dragging this out of the woods with chains and a trailer. I mean, he was, ready to do anything. It wasn't there. There was nothing there. The plants and the ferns that I had ripped out of the ground underneath it to take the picture were like they were all replanted. There was nothing disturbed. Where the body had laid, where my dog and the powder had laid on the ground, the ash, there was nothing there. It was like time had been reversed.
I wanted to ask you what is your idea about that? Do you think it is something to do with like timeline manipulation?
Well, let me tell you this next part. Maybe this will help. I decided to move the body, to put it somewhere, to put rocks on it or branches if I could find them. And so I got out my thermal blanket, I put it over it, and I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to touch the body itself, the skin. And so I put the thermal blanket between me, my hands, and it, and kind of rolled it up, like a sleeping bag, if you can understand that. Um,
Hmm.
and as I was doing that, I realized it was so light. It was lightweight. It probably didn't weigh more than 30 pounds at the most, but yet it was 5 feet tall, which didn't make any sense at all. I mean,
Oh, the being was 5 feet. I
yeah,
thought it was shorter than that.
well, about, what was it, about 4.5 feet, 50, I
Yeah.
think 53 inches, because we,
Right.
we measured it later. But what I'm saying is, if you estimate a child about that size, like a 7 or 9 year old child, they're a lot more weight than 30 pounds. I mean, they're 3 times that usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was bizarre to me that it was so light. So I rolled it up inside the thermal blanket, and I decided to take the straps off my pack because there were some outside straps. I put it around the thermal blanket, like I said, like a burrito or you know, some kind of a package rolled up, picked it up with one hand, and picked up my pack with the other and just started walking, trying to think, okay, I got to get back to my car.
So you carried this thing all the way back to your Jeep.
30 pounds in one hand and my pack in the other. And
Was there
it was
was
fine.
there
It
not
wasn't.
any like did you like given the fact that this thing just ripped the backbone out of your dog, were you not like hesitant to sort of be close with it, especially to carry it for an hour? Like did you
Well,
have
I mean, I had a chance. I had 45 minutes to an hour seeing it wasn't breathing, seeing it wasn't moving, seeing a hole in its head that big and a piece of its skull, skin, and muscle folded over, still attached. I mean, if it would have been hit by a car, it might not have been damaged that hard. But it was not moving at all. I mean, dead as dead. I mean, I poked it and pushed it with a stick, and it wouldn't move. It didn't breathe. So I figured it's dead. So I think my mind is going, put it somewhere where you can come back with somebody who can help you. So that was my methodology. That was my mindset. So I picked it up after I rolled it up. By the way, while I was rolling it up, right next to the body in the woods was this silver looking piece of metal. At first, it was kind of beneath some of the foliage, and I thought, oh, it's a bent soda can. That's what I thought it was. But as I looked closer, it wasn't. It was this object that I call the Link artifact, a silver with raised symbols on it, almost like hieroglyphs on the outside of it. And you'll see it. I've taken lots of pictures of it, had it analyzed by metallurgy in Japan. So I got a lot of information on it. Anyway, I put that in with the body and wrapped it up and started carrying it back to my car. Well, all of a sudden, I mean, miraculously, I'm standing next to my Jeep. Like no time had gone by. Like just bang, I was there. And like I said, it took us an hour to get to that point from my Jeep to where this event happened. I have no idea how that happened. I have no idea why or what caused it, but it was like time was erased.
So you lost like an hour of time.
Well, maybe more, because my watch, I had a watch on that was mechanical. The watch had stopped exactly at 2:53 and was broken. Okay, so that's exactly when this event happened. 2:53. And I got back to my Jeep, and my Jeep had a clock in it, and it was still running. It was still going. So I had been in this area for almost 3 hours total since I left my Jeep. So 3 hours had passed on my Jeep's clock, but in my mind, I just can't fathom that I walked all the way back without something else happening, because it was just like I took 3 steps out of that area, turned around, looked at the black obelisk, which wasn't moving, was still there, turned around, started walking, and boom, I was back at the Jeep. So time was somehow manipulated, or I lost it because I was so stressed, so in shock, possibly, that I just couldn't recognize the time passing. I don't know. So
So then you take this thing home, right? You put this.
I opened the back end of my Jeep. I lift it up, put it in. I close the door. I walk around to the driver's side. I get in. I sat down, and I noted, just as I sat there, I realized Susie isn't there. Susie isn't sitting in the seat where she always sat whenever we would go. And then I realized something has happened. Something really has happened. And I looked in the mirror, the rearview mirror, and I could see the top of this gold and silver thermal blanket. So I knew something was there in the back of my car. And I didn't want to think about it. Josh, I just did not want to think about it because it was too messed up. It was too insane. Nothing was logical. Nothing made any sense. And as a scientist, which I was, mostly into, like I said, medicine, I knew the difference between reality and some weird in what can I say, invented story in my mind, I would know the difference. And I knew
Like
I
a
wasn't,
hallucination.
yeah, I knew I wasn't doing that because every time I would think that, I'd turn around and I'd say, well, no, you really went to the woods. You really are completely covered in feces and wood and, uh, stuff from the ground. I was a mess. So I got home, drove in my carport, saw this in the rearview mirror, got out of my car, went into my house, not even thinking about anything, just went into my house, drank some water in front of my kitchen sink. And as I did that, I thought, I got to take this thing out of my car. Somebody's going to steal it. Somebody's going to, I just didn't know what I was thinking. I was just, you know, trying to think some kind of logical step. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take it out of my car. And I thought, well, am I going to bury it? Am I going to put it under the tree? And I thought, no, I'm going to put it in my garage because I didn't drive my car in my garage. It was just like a storage area. And I thought, I'm going to put it in the garage. That way I don't have to look at it. And as I opened the door to the garage, I saw my old freezer right in front of me. It was a small size coffin type freezer, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
And somebody had given it to me. It was used. I had a couple of things in it, but not much. So I thought to myself, okay, this is a piece of meat. It's going to decompose. So I'm going to put it in the freezer. That makes absolute sense. I mean, if you had a deer, that you had shot, that's what you do. You want to refrigerate it as soon as possible so it doesn't decompose. And my idea was it's out of sight, even better. It's in the freezer. So I lifted the little basket that was in the freezer out. I took the whole thermal blanket, set it inside the freezer, closed the top of the freezer, which was running. It was about 0 degrees. Um, and I closed the door to the garage, which was separate from my house. There was a yard between it. And I went into my house. And again, I drank some water. I was really not thinking about anything. I didn't want to think about it. I just really didn't want it in my mind because I was so sick. I was still throwing up. I was still hyperventilating, not as bad as I was in the woods, but still having trouble breathing. Like there was a pressure on my chest, on my body. And I mean, I felt like I had been beat up, physically. I felt bruised and like my muscles didn't work right. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And I said, I'm just going to go stand in the shower because I was a mess. I mean, my clothes were completely soiled everywhere you could believe. Uh, I was in terrible physical shape. So I just went, stood in the shower, peeled off my clothes, layers as I could, with all my clothes on. I was in the shower and just let the water run on me, just clean my body because it was terrible. It was a mess. And I was still gagging and throwing up. This was hours now after the initial incident. So I was gagging and throwing up blood, and I knew I had to calm down. I just had to calm down, drink some water. So I got out of the shower, put on some other clothes, went to the kitchen, drank some water, and saw the phone. And I thought, I got to call my girlfriend, tell her I'm here, I'm back. And so I called her. She wasn't home. I left a message, said, I'm back home. Call me when you can. And then I called my friend, Gary, a guy who I'd known for years and years. I mean, somebody in middle school I had met, and I had known him through all the college years. We were best of friends. He was an architect, certified architect, really great guy. Gary was his name. And I called him again. He wasn't home. I left him a message. I said, call me. I'm really sick. Susie is dead. Call me. I'm home. And that was the message I left him. And within 15 or 20 minutes, the phone rang. It was him. He says, what's going on? What's up? what's the problem? I said, like I said, Susie's dead. Susie was killed, and I'm home, and I'm really sick, and I really need help. He said, I'll be right over. And so he hung up. He came over within 10 minutes. He lived just a few miles away from me. And he came in and he said, what can I do? And I said, I don't know. I'll just tell you the story. So I told him the story, and he said, Jonathan, I just can't fathom this. I just can't understand it. And I said, I'll show you the videotape that I took. I'll play it on my TV right here. And I played it, and he was just dumbfounded, like, couldn't believe it. And I said, come to the garage. Come to the garage. And he said, why? And I said, because I have the body in the garage. And he, again, just gave me this attitude like, Jonathan, you're just really sick. You really need to rest, And I said, come with me. And I took him out to my garage. We went in the garage. I opened the freezer. I said, just stand here. I opened it, took it out, laid it on the floor, and opened the thermal blanket. And there was the body, the entire body, with a wound
And
in
what
his
did he
head.
do? How did he react to
He
that?
was just in shock. Didn't say anything. Couldn't say a word. Just backed up away from it. And well, I'll tell you what he was saying. He was just saying, fuck, you know,
Understandable.
He just couldn't believe what he was looking at, but nevertheless, there it was. So I wrapped it back up, put it back in the freezer, and it wasn't moving, it wasn't breathing, it wasn't doing anything as far as I knew. And I went in the house. We went in the house. We pulled a bottle of alcohol off the shelf, and we both started drinking. And he would never said a word until I finally said, "What do you say something?" And he said, "Unbelievable." He says, "That's just unbelievable." I said, "Nevertheless, it's there. You saw it. You really saw it, didn't you?" And he said, "Yes, it's really there." And I said, "You saw the video. You can play it again. You can see where I was in the woods." And he wanted to see it again. And we started talking about it for a couple of hours, saying, I kept saying, I don't know what to do. I said, I'm sick enough to where I think I should probably consider going to the hospital, because it felt like radiation poisoning to me. That's what it felt like my body was going through. And so I said, but I'm just going to calm down. I'm just going to get calmed down, and then we'll decide what to do. And he finally said, out of his exuberance, he said, Jonathan, I know what this is. And I said, I don't know what it is. I don't even want to think about it. He said, it's an alien. It's either an extraterrestrial or an extra dimensional alien. He said, I know it is. I've read about this. And I said, I don't know anything. I don't know. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to grab hold of something that I really didn't believe in. But he said,
Why? Why
because
do you think you were resistant to that?
because it wasn't logical. It didn't make sense to me. As far as my paradigm, everything I'd ever studied, I'd never seen anything or heard anything about that. And it just didn't make an absolute sense to me. So I was resistant to think that way. But he was adamant about it. He said, oh, I know what it is. I absolutely know. I've seen drawings of these things, And I said, okay, what do we do? What do we do with it? I said, who do we call to come and take it? Because I didn't want it there. And he said, we can't call the police. There's other people we can call. And he said, I'll start calling. I'll start making these phone calls. And he did.
Who did he call? Do you know?
He called the Air Force. He called the Army. He called the airport, our big airport. He called MUFON. And he called Peter Davenport, who is like the head of a UFO center to take information.
Hmm.
I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know what it was. He called. He says his whole methodology was, what if you had something like this? What if you found a body in the woods and it's dead? What would you do with it? Who could you trust? Where do
Right. So
you
he wasn't telling them the story. He was basically giving them like a hypothetical of like,
Right,
what if I
exactly.
had a body? What if I found one?
Right, right. And who would you talk to? Who would you trust to be able to deal with this? And first
What
of
kind of
all,
responses was he
the
getting?
responses to begin with were negative. They thought he was just being crazy, telling a story. Thought he was some kid telling a story. And I said, you got to be more serious because they're not going to take, he said, they're not taking me seriously. And I said, well, you got to be more serious. You have to make them believe it and realize it. And I said, I don't know how to do that. And he kept calling, kept getting these kind of half-ass responses. And finally he got to where he called this group called MUFON. It's Mutual UFO Network. It's supposedly a national group that studies this kind of thing. And he called him. He said the same thing. What if you found this? Who would you do? And those guys went crazy. They were so excited. You actually have evidence? You actually have it? I said, yes. Gary said, yes. And so they set up an appointment, you know, 6 hours later to meet in a neutral public place, a restaurant. And I said we could bring some of the pictures. I could bring a video, but I don't have a video player, a portable one. And they said, just bring the pictures. And then you have negatives? I said, yep, we got the negatives.
So is this the same day that it happened?
This is 9 hours from when I brought the body home until I'm going to meet with these people. Okay?
Right. So how did you get the pictures developed already to show
Because
them?
I took the film canister up to my local film processor, which is an independent thing. There's lots of film processing places, or there was in the day.
Mhm.
Now it's all
Yeah, yeah.
digital. These are not digital photos, these are film photographs, both slide film and print negative film. So I just had the print negative film developed. I had them kick out 2 copies of each one. It's a machine. They put the film in one end. It, processes them. They drop out and put them in a bag, and you pay your money. And it takes about 2 hours to do that. I knew the people that owned the place because I had, taken a lot of film over the years through them. So it was just a lady, and I said, can I pick them up? She said, a couple hours, fine, I'll be back. I picked them up and drove to the restaurant where I met these guys. Sat down with them. They were beside themselves. When I showed them what I had, I told them more about it. I didn't tell them that I had the body. I said, we can probably go back and get it, or, I can take you back. They said, that's crazy. That's amazing. And they were so excited. So I gave them the copies of some of the film. I didn't give them all of it, but I gave them the negatives of the ones that I gave them. They said, well, we'll return it. Don't worry. We're going to return. Okay, fine. I said, we'll call you tonight at this number. I gave them my phone number. They said, we'll call you a certain time. We parted ways. They went off in their car. I and Gary went off in ours and went home. And I never heard from them again. I called
Do you
the
remember their
number.
names?
I
Do you remember their names from MUFON? Who they were?
Yes, I have that written down. Remember, it's 30 years ago. I had their phone number and the names of the two people. It was a guy and a girl. They were probably in their mid 20s, but nice, nice kids. Anyway, I called the number when time went by that they didn't call me when they said they would call me, and that number was a disconnected number. So all I can assume is they weren't who they said they were. because I called another number for MUFON and said, there's a so-and-so and a so-and-so that came to talk to me who said they're part of your group, part of MUFON. They said they'd never heard of those people, that they'd never had a phone call from us at all. And so all I can assume is they must have got my information from when Gary was calling everybody. Maybe somebody tapped the line. I don't know.
Interesting.
Now, at that point, it was getting to be evening. It was like 6 o'clock. Gary left. I was home trying to calm down, trying to lay down. There was a knock on my front door. I was alone at home. There was a knock at my front door. I went and answered the door. I thought it was Gary. And it was 3 people, all dressed in black suits with a very, very white skin. 2 of them had sunglasses on, so I couldn't see their eyes. The one guy says, "We're here to talk to you about what you found in the forest." And I said, "What?" I said, "I've never talked to you before." And they said, "We need to talk to you." And he literally pushed his way into my living room. And there were 3 of them, 2 guys, 1 girl. They were all about the same height, about 6 feet tall.
And what did they look like, facial structure,
They looked
features wise?
very white skin, very white skin. That was the first weird thing I saw. But then I realized what they were wearing was all the same material that their suit was made out of. And it was almost hypnotic, the weave in it. Like if you looked at it too long, you almost felt like you were dizzy or starting to be unconscious. At first, I took that to be, well, it's the sickness that I'm going through. But the longer they were there, the more I felt the way they were talking was hypnotic. It was really, really hypnotic.
Was there some kind of similarity between the material of their suit and the material of the thing that's in your freezer?
No, it didn't look anything like the creature in my freezer, which I took to calling Freddy.
Yeah, so I want to get to Freddie and the examination that you did in a minute, but just a bit more on this Men in Black encounter. So
Yeah,
these 3 people, two male, one female,
yeah, they're
push their way in.
only one of them is talking to me. Like I said, his voice was very methodical, very educated and sophisticated. His vocabulary was extremely positive, that we know what happened to your dog. And soon as he said that, I said, "You don't know anything." And he said, "Yes, we do. Where did you park your Jeep?" Okay. I'd never seen these people before. And they're now telling me things that only somebody would know who knows me. Have you talked to your work? Do you realize this could condemn your life? What's going on? And at that point, I said, it's time to just get the fuck out of my house. And they said, okay, but the next people that you're going to have to deal with are not going to be so nice. I said, get the fuck out of my house.
So did you not want to ask more about like how they knew about the dog and the
Well,
situation?
I did. I said, what are you talking about? Tell me what you're talking about. And they wouldn't say. They just said, we know what happened. And at that point,
what was the purpose of their visit, you think? Were they trying to stop you from talking to people?
Yes, they were. I believe that they were basically giving me a heads up that this whole situation was going to erupt into a negative event in my life, because that's pretty much what they kept saying. With knowledge, they had knowledge of what actually had happened. They knew that I had driven back from the forest. They knew what car I used. They knew what time things were. And they said, where's the body? And at that point, like I said, I threw them out of my house. I actually pushed the guy out of my house, out of the door, and slammed and locked the door. It was,
They didn't say who they represented or
oh
where they
yeah,
come
they
from.
said they were from a group called the School. That's all they said. They said, we represent a group called the School, which is where people go to, what he used a real strange word, distribute their facts. He said, this is where people go to distribute their facts. And, you know, a lot of their vocabulary didn't make sense other than they kept saying, we know this, we know this. You don't realize, you know, who knows what you've done. And they were saying it like, what you've done is breaking the law. You realize you're in trouble, you know. And
Mm.
like I said, I told them nothing. So I had no idea where this came from. Again, I'm thinking in my head, did these MUFON guys tell somebody something? Did you know, is that part of this whole cabal? I don't know, but I didn't want them in my house because they were weird. They were really, really weird. People say, well, is that what you call men in black? I don't know. I never heard that term before. But now that I'm educated, yes, that's what they were like. They were military type people, but with extremely uh, hypnotic vocabulary. Because the longer they talked to me, I mean, I almost felt like I was sleepy when they were talking to me. And the
Wow.
fabric on their clothes was really weird. It had a really weird weave that when the light hit it bounced in a really different way. I'd never seen any fabric do that. And they all had the same thing. They all wore the same suit, the same clothes, exactly the same. And like I said, two of them didn't say anything. Just the one was talking.
That's so interesting. And so after that,
So
there's these videos of you,
well,
I guess, examining the body.
let me say one more thing. I
Yeah.
said, I'm going to call the police as they're getting out of my house. They said, that's okay. The police are with us. And I looked out on the street and there was a police car, a Seattle police car parked right behind the car they drove up in. And as
What did
they,
they drive in?
a big black car, just a sedan, like a Ford Galaxy or something. But as they drove away, the police car just followed them. So I'm thinking, I had a friend who was on the police department in Seattle. I mean, a personal friend. So I called him and said, "Can you check into this?" You know, and he gave me all the information, and I gave him the information of what time it was, where they were, location, all that stuff. And he called me back an hour later. He says, "I can't find anything where a car was issued to be in your area." On the third day, I had set up an appointment with another guy who I worked with at the University Medical Center, a friend, and I said, "Come over. I have something I want to show you and talk to you about." And he was very excited. He says, "Okay, you know, that's great." And it was set up for a certain time. Well, a half hour before that time, I got a phone call from him. And all of a sudden, the tone had changed in his voice. He says, "I'm not coming, Jonathan. I'm not coming. And you shouldn't be doing this. You should just not do this at all." And I said, "Not do what?" And he said, "I'm just telling you, I'm not coming. And I don't think you should be dealing with this." So somebody had talked to him. Somebody had gotten to him and told him not to go to my house.
But you hadn't actually told him
No, I had told
about the
him, I
story.
had told him nothing. So I was angry. You know, I was kind of upset. And I went out to my garage because I had opened up a big table and big light over it so that they could clearly see the body and look at it. And I decided, okay, I'm going to put that away because he's not coming. So I folded the table up, set it aside, pulled the light, and all of a sudden I started to hear a scratching sound or a rubbing sound, like behind the freezer, like something was clawing or scratching. And I thought, is that the freezer's compressor going out? I'm thinking. or is that rats? Because it's an outside building. Occasionally we got some rodents. And I thought, that's weird. Well, I'm going to open the freezer to check the thermometer that's in the top of the door. And that'll tell me if its temperature's going up, then the freezer's broken. Compressor's not working. So I went over, opened that freezer, and the thing inside, the creature inside, sat up out of the end of the thermal blanket with his head screaming at me.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Just forcefully screaming at me so much that it felt like it was pushing me back, pushing me across the room with this just terrible blood scream that it had. And I just ran out of the garage, went into my house, closed the door, and just sat there for a couple of minutes, called Gary, and I said, we got a bigger problem.
So this is after.
This
is
is
this
the
before or after the
third
footage?
day.
Because there's footage of you examining and like lifting up its eyes. Is this prior to this?
It's after that. I had already taken that footage.
Can we talk about that footage?
Yes, I had examined the body on a table. I did a topical examination, feeling all the ribs, counting them, feeling the muscle structure and the bone structure of its neck and its torso and its legs. It was covered in this black suit, which covered its hands, its arms, its torso, its legs, and its feet, all in one material, all in one piece, no seams. Just like it had been...
No buttons, no joins.
No, just like it had been sprayed on almost. It was so tight to its body. And I while I was examining it, I took an X-Acto knife and I cut it because I was thinking, well, I can cut this off. And you know what an X-Acto knife is, right?
It's like a scalpel type knife?
It's like a razor blade that you can cut cardboard with and, really sharp. And I cut about 4 inches down its chest, and I pulled the knife out and it sealed itself back up. Almost like it melted together, sealing itself back. And I cut it again, and it sealed itself back up again. And then I went to cut it a third time, and it wouldn't let me cut the material. It actually stopped the X-Acto knife from moving. So this fabric...
It's like intelligent almost.
Was self-healing or nanotechnology is what people tell me. It had to be. Now, I want you to hear something. This is important. In 2000, my book was published, which went out all over the world, that had written in it exactly what I'm telling you, that I had cut the fabric and it sealed itself up, that was self-healing. 6 years later, NASA came out with an advertisement that they had created a fabric that was self-healing for their spacesuits, that if you cut it, it would seal itself up. Now, I just want you to think about something. That was, I wrote that 7 years before NASA came out with this. Okay? So if I faked it, how did I have that information?
I wanted to say, I noticed in that footage of you doing the examination that it appears like the being is alive. Like it seems like it's blinking. Did you notice this? And I noticed in some of the shots as well, you can see both of your hands. So who's doing the camera? How did that work?
Well, it was me doing the camera, and it was in my rec room of the house because there was more light there. And Gary was there, but he didn't touch the camera. When I put the camera down on a box where both of my hands were manipulating the wound in his head, opening and closing the wound, the flap, the skin and skull flap, that was all setting the camera on a box. And at one point, I even taped the camera to a small stepladder. I didn't have a tripod that would fit that camera. It didn't have a screw in for like a normal tripod. So it was me. It was me doing it. Now, as far as somebody saying, well, it looks alive, well, at that point, I didn't think it was alive. I thought it was dead as dead could be because I'd been taking it in and out of the freezer, laying it down, opening the thermal blanket, and letting people look at it. I mean, I'd been doing that. I'd taken it out probably 10 times at that point before I'm examining it. Now I'm examining it. I'm taking pictures of it, taking video of it with the same camera that I used in the woods. There's this really little tiny black and white viewfinder. I was not thinking that it was doing anything other than a dead piece of meat. Only later did somebody tell me, Jonathan, you can see the eyes blinking. You can see the facial muscles moving on his head when you're examining it. And what I'm saying is, I don't know that. But then, like I said, on the third day, at that point, I knew he was alive. I knew he was sitting up screaming at me. Okay. So I wasn't too concerned with the fact that he was blinking in the video because now I got this wild, crazy creature in my garage that's probably going to kill me because I tried to kill it. And that's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. And I went back out there with a shovel in my hand, ready to defend myself, thinking it's going to jump out, it's going to try to kill me or run away, which I hoped it would. I opened the freezer and it just sat there and its head came up and it just looked at me very calmly. It was now moving really slowly. It wasn't screaming at me. It was making kind of a chirpy, squeaky sound, almost sounding like a dolphin.
So we've just skipped ahead here, right? From when you were filming and examining it?
Just on the third day. I examined it late on the second day. Okay?
Right.
So
one more question about that
yes.
is when you were sort of moving its head around and its eyelids,
and its
did you
mouth.
notice anything, like anything that was distinct about its anatomy that was different, like its skin, or did the joints appear to move different to how you would expect a human to move?
The joints moved pretty much like a human joint would move. It had a neck, it had a vertebrae, all those functioned. Some people said, oh, it looks like the neck is broken. Well, at the point where I knocked it down, it could have facilitated some kind of fracture. Okay, because I mean, I really hit it. I can't tell you how hard. I mean, it broke the branch when I hit it on its head. But what I can tell you is the skin was really, really dense, like a pig skin, like an old pig skin, really coarse and not very pliable. Had a lot of wrinkles. I mean, it looked old to me. But I opened the eyes. The eyes were a little bit tough to get open, but I opened them. I saw that it had pupils. I saw that it had, basically the same type of orb that our eyes are, with an iris. And it had black and purple coloring in that iris, surrounded by a white orb. Just very much.
It even looks a little red in some of the photos that I've seen.
Well, believe it or not, the eyes reflected the light, which caused them to have a refraction of a reflection. Okay, a red reflection.
Interesting.
Not every animal does that. Not every, cats that are nocturnal have that really strong. And so maybe it was more nocturnal. But it had an inside eyelid, almost like if you and I had a big contact lens put in our eyes to be like a sunglass. Because I opened the eyes and I moved that inner eyelid because it was separate. It was not connected to its eye. It was just setting on the top of the eye. I moved the whole thing.
Like a giant contact lens.
Right, and you can see that in the video.
Did you remove that at all?
No, I just moved it. I didn't take it out. I don't know why. I just didn't.
When you moved it, did you move it enough to see what was behind it?
Yes.
Like the actual eye?
Yes, I saw. That's what I'm saying. I pushed it up out of the way, and I could see the iris, the part of our eyes that produce the color. And I said it was kind of a dark purplish veined red. And it had the same kind of capacity as our eyes, where the iris opens and closes like a camera lens to let the different amounts of light in. And the rest of it was white. Okay.
Wow, so it was like a giant human eye in a sense.
Yeah, right. And it was, when the eyes were open, it was an oval about 2 inches by 4 inches, the slit, once it was open. The pictures, most of the pictures that you see that I took, the eye's closed. The eyelid is closed. Because people always say, oh, their eyes are so small. Well, not if you look at the dimension of the slit in the eye. If you realize that, I mean, look at our eyes. When our eyes are closed, it looks like our eyes are very little. Same kind of thing. But anyway, its anatomy was 90% exactly like a human. Very, very much.
It's interesting. Have you ever seen the Nazca mummies, the tridactyls? Because this is one of the things that fascinated me. Is there a comparisons out there? I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Yes,
I've got
a photograph of one of them and a photograph of Freddy.
They're
very
so
similar. They're very
down
similar.
To the ear canal, even. They both have these tiny little, small holes in the ear.
He didn't have any ears, but he had what's called a temporal membrane on the outside where our ear hole would be. Yeah. So it's possible that his ears were stronger than ours because of that.
And so do these Nazca mummies. Okay. Do you have any kind of conclusions about that? Do you think they're the same thing?
I've shared the pictures that I have of Freddy with them. They made a comparison where they put them side by side. They do look very, very similar, but the mummies are very small, smaller than Freddy is.
Right.
So that's the biggest difference. The guy who was in possession of the mummies at the time was Jaime Maussan, who I had done some work with, who had invited me to Mexico to do a expose on my case in front of, the public.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Anyway, I did the anatomy. I chronicled everything I could find about his body, about the differences in his body compared to humans. I thought he had 3 fingers. I thought he had 3 fingers like that, a thumb and a big finger and another big finger. But what he actually had was 5. Just inside this suit, it was designed like a mitten. Okay?
How did you figure that out?
Well, I could feel it. I could feel it through the suit. I could feel that there were 2 fingers in this finger of the glove and 2 fingers in this, and a thumb, an opposable thumb that I moved all over the place. In fact, I thought I broke it, but obviously I didn't. Incredibly amazing is what I have to say. When people say, well, what do you think about this? I said, it's unbelievably amazing, because here is a creature who is intelligent, was out doing something, is obviously not human, because I took, during that examination, remember it had a big hole in its head? Well,
you got them tested, right? With
I took samples of his brain material, of the blood, and the skull. I took samples of all of that. I cut it out. Now, if this thing was alive, he had amazing durability to not move while I was doing that. Because, I really did cut big pieces out of his head. So I took those to the University of Washington to a guy who I had met, not somebody who was really a friend, but somebody I worked in the same building with, head of pathology, Dr. Wessels and Dr. Haggett. 2 guys who were top of their class really knew their stuff. So I said to Dr. Haggett, I said, I've got some samples of something that I found in the woods, and I'd like to know what it is. I said, I'll pay you to do the study because I knew it took some time. Now, this wasn't in the days where they had a computer set up to take this stuff. This is before all that. This took a week of hands on testing all of the pieces of material and the tissue samples and the blood. It took a long time. So I said, I'll leave this with you. And he said, okay, that's fine. And I went away.
Did you tell him anything?
I didn't know. No, I said, it's something I found in the woods. I was honest to that point. And he said, okay. He says, I'll tell you whatever it is. So I went away. He called me about 4 days later and said, Jonathan, I need you to come in to my office. I need to talk to you about this. I said, okay. Now, in the meantime, I had called my office to talk to my assistant who worked there with me, who had been there with me for 5 years, to tell him I'm not coming into work. I'm still sick. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to see any patients, so reschedule everything. He said, fine. But he said, Jonathan, I got to ask you a question. He said, are you moving your office? Are you moving to another place? I said, no. Why? He said, well, there's men here that are taking all the filing cabinets out of your end of the office. All the computers and the filing, they have a chart that I had to sign off on to give them permission to do this. And that's an administrative situation from the head of the hospital. And I said, well, I'm not moving. I don't know what this is. And so he said, okay. He says, I'll talk to you later. Hung up. I called the administrator of the hospital, the main administration department, and I said, I need to talk to Dr. Jonathan Reed, and I need his department number. And they put me on hold, said just a minute, which was normal. And they came back and said, I'm sorry, we don't have anybody listed by that name. Nobody working in the hospital with that name. I had been there 15 years. So what do you imagine is happening? They're taking everything out of my office, and they've now eliminated my record as being working there. So now I knew something more was happening. Somebody was erasing things. Well, I ended up finding out that they erased all of my credentials, all my accreditation of all the colleges that I worked, that I studied at, that I'd graduated from. They told all the people in my department they were not to talk about me, they were not to reference me in any shape or form because I was now under investigation for a major felony. And if they talked about me, they also could be in trouble and possibly lose their job. This was all done that day, that same day.
Right. And did this person were you ever able to get the test back from this person about what they discovered?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Like I said, he called me and said, Jonathan, come in to my office. I went into his office. He showed me the test results. He said, where did you get this? And I said, it was in the woods. And he said, well, what is it? And I said, I don't know. That's why I wanted to do this test. He said, well, I'll tell you, the blood analysis chromosome study said it has 46 chromosomes exactly like humans have. But 9 pair of the chromosomes were different. And he said the closest representation he could find that weren't exact, but he said closely representing sea tortoise and dolphin, those 9 pair. And he said, I'm going to tell you, Jonathan, we don't have the technology to mix chromosomes. We can't do it. We don't have that technology. So whatever this is something that I've never seen. And he said, I've been a pathologist for a long time. And he said, this is a brand new species. And he said, I'd like to publish it if I can. And I
And
said,
what did you say?
yes, that's fine. I agree, 100%. Because the more people that could come on board and say, this is what they found as a scientist, the
Of
better off
course.
everyone would be. And he had the full layout of the chromosome study, of all of the DNA and the blood representation. He said the blood is very, very different. All the red corpuscles are nucleated, which is not what normal animals have. He said the only animals that have that kind of nucleated red blood cells are things like certain kinds of gators, like alligators and crocodiles. But he said it doesn't match that. He says, I've done a study with 3 universities since you gave me this. We've gone over all of their criteria to match this set of 9 He says, we can't match it. So it's never been cataloged before. So this is a brand new species.
So did this article ever get published? Is this person available to talk to about what they saw?
Well, let me explain what happened. 2 days later, I got a call from his secretary who told me somebody came into his office and shot him in the head and killed him, and then killed himself in the same moment. He said, the secretary said 10 minutes later, there were people, military people here, taking everything out of his office, all his filing cabinets, all his computers, saying that we're confiscating this for evidence. They took it out of the building. I mean, 4 or 5 people came in and just took this stuff. And then she said, 15 minutes later, the police arrived to investigate what had happened. So she said, I don't know who these other people were.
Has this happened to a lot of people who have helped you?
Yes, it has.
What?
But let me explain one more thing. These
Go
men
ahead.
that took this material out of his office went to his home, broke into his home, and took all the computers and all the files they could find, including his wife's computer, laptop, and just took it and walked away. Now, are these men in black? I don't know. But it sounds like it. It sounds like the second he was dead, that it could have been a setup. Somebody could have been told to kill him, and then they killed themselves. Now, I don't know how that would happen. This was a student that he had taught. There was not a lot of discrepancy in why he would have had bad feelings with Roger Haggett, Haggett. You can look it up. Seattle
This is the
Times.
pathologist?
Yes, Seattle Times. It's all of his obituary is there. And this happened 3 days after he had given me the results of that test.
So I wonder, like, why do you think you're still alive? If you're at the center of this, why are people around you dying?
Well, the only thing I can assume, and what other people have told me, is that I have access to this device that I found with the body that I call the link artifact. This metal looking cuff. I think they want it. They've attempted to steal it. I've been beaten up and thrown in a van, and for a couple of days, just beat and tortured, and then
By who?
thrown out in the side of, who knows?
Do
Just
they
men.
like say anything? They don't identify.
They say you got to stop talking, or you're going to be dead. You know, or we're going to do this to your family and your friends. Just big guys that grabbed me and tortured me. You want to know how they tortured me? You want me to tell you? They took a spike, a railroad spike about this long, and they shoved it through my testicle
Oh my God.
with a hammer. And
Wow.
of course, I passed out and woke up with a hole in my testicle. And that's a pretty serious, account. That's a pretty serious method of telling somebody, you got to stop this. Okay. Then other times, I've gotten email, I've gotten all kinds of stuff. My whole team has gotten email saying, you got to stop this, you got to give up what you've got, or we're going to take you all out, or, just all kinds of things. Now, do I think now? I mean, I've been shot 3 times. I've been shot in the head, I've been shot in the shoulder.
Is it 3 separate
3
incidents?
separate incidents. The
And
first time,
they're all attempts on your life.
the first time was the first time I spoke in public. I went home on an airplane. I was living in Vancouver, Canada at the time. I had not been back to Seattle because I didn't want this on my family and my friends. So I left town. On the 10th day, from the day I brought the body home, 10 days later, I got in a car and drove to Canada and lived in Canada on the streets for 10 months. 10 months. I mean, I had to steal food. I had to find a place to live. It was insane. But I survived. I survived. And I survived with the help of some other people. Because after 10 months, somebody talked to me on the street who I didn't believe, who said, Jonathan, just came up and said my name. Jonathan, we can help you. We know you're having problems. And I ran out of the store where I was. And then I watched the guy leave the store and I followed him. And I was basically going to take him out. I had a gun at that time. And
This person was offering to help you, though.
Well, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what that meant. And I didn't trust anybody at that time.
Understandable. Yeah.
And I said, who in the blank are you? What are you talking about? He just stood there and said, I know you don't believe me, but we're here to help you. We know what you've been going through. I'll give you a phone number. You can call me 24 hours a day. We'll help you. We'll put you in the hospital. We'll give you food. We'll give you whatever you want. We just want to help you. And again, I didn't believe him. So I just left with that piece of paper and that phone number. And a couple days later, I thought, okay, I'm going to call him. I'm going to see what this is. I'll play your game. I called him and I said, yeah, I'm okay. Who are you? They didn't give me any information other than saying, we're here to help you. We are in the city. We are living in Vancouver. We can put you in an apartment or a hotel. We can give you some money if that's what you need. I said, okay, give me $200. Put it under the bench in the park on this one specific place. And I said, if I see anybody around, I'm not going near it. So I went to that park early in the morning and I watched everybody who walked around, watched the whole place, waited for somebody to come, saw a man sit at that bench and finally put something under the bench, like an envelope. I waited till he left. It was totally out of sight. I went back, I got the envelope, and the money was in it, $200 in cash. In Canadian money, believe it or not. And I went away, and that phone number was inside the envelope, said, call us, whatever you need. So I waited for about a day, and I called them, and I was arrogant. I was angry at all that had happened. And I said, who in the blank are you? And they said, well, we understand that you are angry and you've been through hell. All we can tell you right now is that we'll help you in any way. We'll bring you in. We'll give you food. We'll give you security if that's what you need. And I said, okay, where do I go? And they said, any hotel you want. So I told them a hotel. They said, we'll put it in this name. All you have to do is go to the desk. They'll give you the key. And I figured at this point, they're just going to take me. This is just more of these bad guys, but they're going to
Mhm.
take me. And I thought, I'm tired. I'm tired of dealing with this, living on the street, being dirty all the time, trying to, survive. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to do it. So I went to the hotel. They had my name, not my name, but another name. I asked for the key. They gave it to me. Everybody was graceful. I went to the room, and there was nobody in the room but another envelope with my real name on it. I opened it. It said, "Here's the number. If you want something else, call me. You can stay here as long as you want." And that was pretty cool, because it was like a
So,
5-star hotel. I mean, I hadn't taken a shower in weeks, you know, and
so did you get to know who these people were? Did you
yes,
develop a
yes, I
relationship with
did.
them?
Yes, over the next week, I made more conversation. I called the number. I thanked them for what they had done for me. And I said, I don't know what to say. I don't know what else to do. And they said, well, if you want to talk about it, we're willing to talk to you and we're willing to help you. And the guy said, we are with a group called the Alliance, and we help people like you that have been through this kind of trauma. We know, and the guy's telling me all this on the phone. And he said, we know that you had a problem in the forest, that you had a creature. He was saying all this. What he didn't know is that about a month after I left Seattle, the last time I saw Freddy, the creature, I was in a room in a house, and all of a sudden, he manifested in the corner of the room. He just materialized, just winked in, if you can imagine that. One moment, there's nothing there. The next moment, there he is, standing there, rocking back and forth, looking at me, putting things in my mind, putting pictures in my mind, saying,
So
this is who I am. I am the guy. I am the one that was in your house. He's telling me that. And
I want to get into this, but I don't want to skip too far ahead and miss bits because I want to understand what happened between when after you examined him and he popped up out of the freezer and screamed at you. There was, from my understanding, there was a few days while he was still at your house where you
yes,
kind of developed a bit of a relationship with him
yes.
before he went missing. So can you kind of fill in that space for
Sure.
us?
After he popped up and screamed at me, then he screamed at Gary, and we went away. Then I went back out to the garage. Now you can say, why would you do that? You know, why when you're scared of him, when you know he's probably going to jump out and bite you or kill you, why would you go back out to the garage? I don't know why, but I did. I went back out and sat down on a stool as far away from the freezer as I could get, and I opened the top of the freezer and backed away, and he just sat in there. He sat in there really calmly, like obviously he had a wound in his head that was, that big. And he was definitely damaged. He was, I figured he'd die any minute, but he was moving really slowly and looking at me, and the freezer was open. I sat there and I started to talk as if I'd be talking to a patient or if I was
Mhm.
talking to Susie, my dog. And I said, the first thing is I said, I'm very sorry for what happened. I said, I'm very, very sorry. And I said, I'm sorry what happened to you. And I said, I'm sorry what happened to my dog, Susie. And if she attacked you, which I don't know, but if she did, it was probably only in defense of me. And he acknowledged that. He said, in my mind, I'm getting, yes, I understand. Yes, I understand. But he didn't say what he understood. He just said, I understand. And I'm thinking, well, maybe he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Maybe he doesn't really understand. But as I sat there for over an hour, he's putting these images in my head from the forest when he was doing his geology, telling
So
me,
it's not telepathy now. Now it's
yes,
more just like,
it's all telepathy. It's all,
but images.
but images and also some words. He was trying to take some of my vocabulary, because what I'm hearing is actually words from my own vocabulary. And he's telling me, sorry, my security dog is going off. Really, they're the best security you can have. They hear things 100 times better than we hear.
For sure.
But Freddie just looked at me, just kind of moved back and forth slowly, and I thought, he's dying. He's going through this death phase. It's got to be that. And it wasn't. He was actually reviving. And during the next 4 days, I spent hours and hours sitting in front of the garage, inside the garage, looking at him. He actually would get out of the freezer by himself like a gymnast. He was so strong, set and very, very gracefully put his one hand on the edge of the freezer and lift his entire body out and set it in front and just sit there. Just kind
Did
of.
it look like a human would move, or was it different?
No, it was different. It looked like more like an orangutan would move. But that kind of strength, huge amounts of strength to be able to lift his entire body with one hand and one arm. Amazing. It was just amazing to watch. And little by little, I kept saying, what do I do with you? What can I do to help you? What do I do? I said, because I don't know. So my communication was that kind of thing, saying, I don't know how to deal with you. Do you need food? Do you need some? Anyway, the only thing he would take is water. I took a cup of water, set it on the edge of the freezer. He drank the water. Another time I was out there, I took that cup, filled it full of water, gave it to him in his hand. Now he's got these gloves on, right? So I'm not, no skin, but he actually reached out and grabbed my wrist. I'm holding the cup. He grabbed my wrist and just held onto it and then gently released, really gently, like he was showing me he could take me, he could get to me, but he wasn't going to hurt me. That's what it meant to me. And I was getting these messages of that in my mind so fast and so much. It was like a fire hose of information. And I had to tell him, slow down talking to me, because I can't take it all. I couldn't dissect it.
When you're having these telepathic messages in your mind,
yes.
Does it feel like, when you think to yourself, you can sort of hear your own voice in your head? Is it like hearing your own voice, or is it a different voice?
Well,
what is it like?
It's like a different voice, but yet similar. I believe his ability, and this is what he's told me, is that they take from your head your voice messages, your recognition of vocabulary to use to talk to you. If I was Spanish or Mexican, they would be speaking in Spanish and Mexican. So whatever they're
sense.
with, that's where they get it from. They get it from you.
And he told you this?
Yes. He told me that over the next few months, because he has continued to visit me. He has visited me at least once a month, if not 4 times a month.
For the last 30 years.
Yes. And I have created a database of information. Every time he's been there, I go back and do a recording of what I've learned or what he's said or what he's trying to tell me. A lot of times he's not telling me anything. He's asking me, tell me about your life. Tell me about this. And really articulating, like, do you have a mate? Do you have children? And so he's very inquisitive, very, very much wanting to know where I came from and what my life is about. So I started asking him the same questions about you. Tell me about your life. And he says, "Oh, I can do that. I have lots to tell." And he told me that he came from a laboratory that's under the earth, is what he said, under the earth. And I believe it's actually under the water. It's located somewhere off the coast of California. And that's where he was born. He is actually a hybrid being, an alien human hybrid.
So it's not an extraterrestrial. He's from Earth.
Well, his superiors are extraterrestrial, but he was born here so that he could operate and maintain a life in our environment, because that's the only way it would work. Otherwise, he'd have to be suited. I mean, not breathing our atmosphere. Because where
Uh-huh.
he's from, the people, and that's the Pleiades region and the Orion Nebula, is where his superiors come from, where his ancestry is. He talks and speaks as if he's just another living being, not that there's a design to make him function any different than a normal human being. But he has an absolute job. He is a geologist. He was here studying the rocks in the mountains because it's changing. Our earth is a living thing. And that's what he told me. He said, "You have to understand that it's a living, changing, evolving thing." And that his job, like so many others, is to study all of that and watch the changes of the earth, that there are a lot of changes happening that maybe we aren't aware of. But he's aware of it. Their people are aware of it. And their job is to maintain the structure of our planet as best they can. Now
Right.
they can't
So
make huge changes supposedly in us, but they can make changes in the environment. I got the feeling that they had changed um, some volcanic action and some earthquake action so that it didn't happen, so that it didn't erupt, and we
right.
didn't have, but he said we can't do everything. We only have
So
so
they're
much.
almost like a caretaker role. They have like
Exactly.
a caretaker.
Exactly.
Has he ever explained to you? Well, one, I would like to know if they're a hybrid. What is his other race? Like, what is their original race? And two, is there any kind of messaging about why they can't interact with humans, but they can interact with the
Well,
Earth?
I get the feeling after listening to him for 30 years that there is a prime directive. You know what that means? Like,
No,
if you,
no. Can you
okay,
explain?
if you look at programs like Star Trek, okay, they have something called a prime directive where they can't interfere with another civilization. They can't change the direction or what's happening supposedly with that civilization. They can't update them, and they can't, so they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be noticed. They want to be separate. They just are observers.
Mhm.
Okay. Now they have interacted with humans. They have made some changes. And I am still working on exactly what some of those changes are, because I've gotten some visualizations of some people outside, like some politicians or something, but I don't know who they are. So I'm
Right.
trying to
But you
nail.
think maybe they're involved with the government or the military somehow?
Well, his generation, he's a gray. He is a gray. Okay. If you got to say what race is he, he's one of the grays. Yes, he is a hybrid because we know about his technology, we know about his genealogy, we know about his chromosome study, and we have that absolutely identified. So, but he is a gray. If you have to ask what it is, he's a gray. Now there are, he said there are 30 to 50 different kinds of grays, just like there's a lot of different kinds of human beings. You know, there's black, there's
Makes sense.
white, there's yellow,
Yeah.
there's red. You know, uh, we're all humans, but yet we're all different. And he
Yes.
said that's the same for him. And he said some of us are very mad, some of us are very angry. And I said, well, what does that mean? He says they don't like humans.
Why?
He said sometimes they have to do jobs where they have to work with them, or and I said, does that mean abduction? Does that mean going out and taking them? He said, yes. He says, that's very unfortunate. He said, if it was me, if it was my people, we wouldn't do that the same way.
Did he ever explain, like, is there a name or distinction between them if there's different sort of factions, like we have different sort of
There,
subgroups of human?
yes, there is, but the word for them is like almost non-verbal. It's like almost like a screech sound,
Right.
you know. And he said that's what we are called, you know. But it was like
Have you ever
go ahead.
have you ever had the opportunity to record him again if you're seeing him so frequently?
I have tried, and since he's alert and conscious, you cannot physically photograph them or record them on videotape. I have tried ultrasonic information, I've tried infrared recording, and you get nothing. The most I've
Like
ever
nothing's
gotten,
there.
right, the most I've ever gotten is I got a little bit of a smear blur on a infrared thing. So when I recorded him, his verbal speech, I would just turn on the video recorder and record, and then it recorded the audio when he would make these chirpy, squeaky sounds. And but the video, you can't do anything. There's nothing. And I asked him. I said, "Why is it that I can't photograph you now?" And he says, "Because it's not permitted. It's not
Wait,
permitted."
so let's say he's sitting there on a chair, you video or take a photo. In the actual photograph that you receive, does it just look like an empty chair or it's
Yes,
nothing?
mostly an empty chair. If I record him on just a thermal camera where it's just recording the different temperatures,
Hmm.
there's a little tiny bit of a blur where he's sitting, but hardly
Hmm.
anything. You can't see that it's a being or a person. You can't see it. And anyway, he just said that's part of our security. It's part of my suit, you know.
Interesting.
And I said, "How come some of you guys don't wear any clothes?" Well, he said it's a situation where clothes can hide determination. So in other words, he's saying things that wear clothes don't always tell you the truth. But he said when we don't have any clothes on, we are raw. We are telling you we are the absolute at that point. So that's why a lot of them don't wear clothes.
Right. Other than this sort of suit that is
Right, which is his
almost like formed
protection.
to their body. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely protection for him.
Hmm.
And he told me, he said, when you were in the forest, and he said, you came upon me, he said, the action that you inflicted on me resulted in my suit attacking you. And that's why you were so sick for 3 weeks. It literally attacked me as a predator
Yeah.
to
It makes
keep
sense.
to keep me from supposedly doing anything worse. I mean, the second it hit his head, I was falling to the ground. I mean, it was just like the impact hit me. And I can't explain enough how sick I was. People don't
You
understand.
can hear it. You can hear it in the video, I think.
Yeah,
You
but
can tell
people
this is a
don't
person
understand
stressed.
if you lose control of your bowels and your
Mm,
bladder, you're a mess. You are an
I can imagine.
absolute mess, you know.
Has he ever, in these interactions that you've had with him ongoing, has there ever been any discussion around like disclosure or the revelation of their existence and humanity living alongside them?
The most he said is that humanity, us humans, have not come along fast enough. We haven't re-educated ourselves consciously. We should have been at a higher point of consciousness. And their race is disappointed in that because they've tried to help us. They've tried to advance us through a lot of different means, including genetic alteration, that we have been actually enhanced several times over the last century to come up to where we could understand and possibly work with other beings that weren't like us.
Has he suggested why? Like what it is that's stopping us?
Well, he doesn't know, other than he says, you are dangerous, you are angry, you are, you lose your temper at a second's notice for nothing. You will kill each other for $1, literally, or just being angry. And he said that should have changed a long time ago. He said we had hoped that would change. Yeah. And he said, you're not all like that. He said just a percentage. But he said the unfortunate thing is that percentage is extremely vocal, is extremely apparent that you haven't. He said, look at all the prisons that you have with people that you can't even maintain yourself. You lock them away. He said, if that was my world, he said, they would have eliminated those problems.
Oh,
and I
wow.
said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, we just no longer would have been able to function. And I said, does that mean they would have killed you? They would have ended your life? He said, yes. And he said,
wow.
that's a good thing. He says, because as a society, we can't have that.
We can't tolerate that.
We need to be all in the same direction at the same point. And then I talked to him more about me attacking him, me, hitting him and saying, I'm sorry for this, but I did it because of my dog. And there's no reflection. Anytime I've said that, it's like he doesn't hear it. It's like he just doesn't even recognize when I say, my dog was killed. I was sad. I was very upset. He doesn't, it's like he's not even getting that message at all. Like it doesn't resonate.
Like they don't understand forgiveness or something like that?
Well, I don't think it's that. I think there's things in his head that somehow he's been told he can't discuss, he can't focus on. And that's one of them. Because I mean, I've had years and years and years where I've been asking him this and saying, I'm sorry. And how do you feel about it? And it's like, doesn't even resonate. Like he doesn't even hear it. And then he'll go on to talk about other things. He's talked about his own species, this hybrid species that he's had a relationship with, another one that he was very seriously, personally involved with, and it was a male. It was another male. So he felt
a human.
No, just like himself, a hybrid.
Right.
But no, he's never been close to humans until he got to know me. And I get the feeling like his life changed so much because of maybe the injury, that his superiors said, you can no longer do anything else except take care and attentively understand Jonathan. In other words, he's focusing on that. And he even asked me, he says, does it bother you that I come to see you? And I said, no. I said, it's hard to get used to. I said, it's difficult because you're another species dropping into my world. All of a sudden you're in front of me, and I have memories of what you did to my dog in the woods, and I worry about that. I'm concerned that you're going to hurt me. And he said, I will never hurt Jonathan. I will never, ever hurt you. Now, I haven't told you this, but he came and intervened in something a few years ago. He actually saved me.
From
I
what?
well, I was at some people's house in the summer. They had had a summer dinner party outside their backyard. They had a really nice garden and patio, and I had gone out there because it was about dusk, and they had some fireflies that were flying around, and I just went out to look at them. And all of a sudden, there was this huge, big reptilian thing standing next to me that grabbed me and threw me about 30 feet into the bushes, into their shrubbery. And
What? So wait, this is like a reptilian
yes,
looking human?
yes, it was a reptilian looking dinosaur looking
Can
thing.
you explain it visually?
Well, I've drawn it in pictures. It had some clothing, but not much. It looked prehistoric. It was very, very much a reptile.
But
Snarling,
humanoid,
snarling. Well, I don't know. It wasn't very human looking. It looked like a dinosaur. And it,
humanoid. I mean,
yeah,
like 2 legs, 2 arms.
yes, yes, and one
How
head,
tall?
two eyes, probably 7 feet at least, and it just appeared on their patio, just right next to me. I mean, I had no time. It just grabbed me as I'm realizing what's there and threw me across the way. And then another one appeared and tried to reach down to get me. And all of a sudden, Freddie was there, and he just, whatever he did, made them melt, made them just dissolve onto just
Into like as in into evaporated, nothing
yeah,
left?
onto the ground where there was nothing left. And Freddie looked at me, put his hand out, touched me on the shoulder, and disappeared. But he
Did these
saved me. He absolutely saved me.
did these reptilian beings say or telepathically communicate anything to you?
No,
Was there any kind of
no,
feeling?
they just growled and snarled.
How long ago was this?
A couple years.
Wow. And
I've
where
written
did it
I've
happen again?
written about it and talked about it on some other podcasts. But it was proof that he intervened, that he saved me.
And have you asked him about that? Like, who were they? What happened?
Yes, and he said, "Oh, they are some of the bad ones. They are the people that don't want to communicate. All they want to do is take everything." Because he says they steal the life everywhere they go. And I said, "Why do they do that?" He said, "It's like an energy. It's like a food."
Wow.
So I said, "Well, do they kill humans?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "That's all they do." But it's
And do they
one
live here too? They're
they
from
live.
Earth?
Yes, they live here underground. They
Is there
they are
anything else he's told you about them or other species that are here?
Oh, a lot of things. A lot of things. I've asked lots of questions about where and why and how come, and a lot of it he doesn't know a absolute answer, but he knows enough to. I mean, he's told me where they live. He told me what they want. He said you can't interact with them. They won't interact with you. They will only kill you.
These
So
reptilian beings.
yes,
And like do they have an agenda? Like, are they trying to achieve
their
something?
agenda is to basically kill humans. Because not only do they kill them, but they eat them.
Yeah, I've heard things like that before.
Yeah, well, and that's enough. For me, dealing with them, seeing them, having them touch me, I totally agree that you shouldn't interact with them. There's no nice way. That they are just mean and very destructive, and either hate humans or see us as something to conquer.
Let's talk about the link because I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of the other sides of your story, but there's
Okay.
probably still a bit to discuss about the link. Because I'll say, I mean, I've been captivated by your story for a long time, but the one big hitch for me has been the footage of you wearing this link, and it seems like you suddenly disappear and then reappear. And
Well, I mean,
and
when
it feels unbelievable. Do you know what I mean?
oh, I totally hear what you're saying, and I totally would agree.
If it functions, which sometimes it doesn't, it starts a throbbing inside your chest, literally a pulsation inside your chest that starts from the center and emanates to your extremities and becomes harder and harder. And then when that happens, then it starts to be activated by, there, now I can feel it. I can feel it in my chest. It's painful. But if I hold my chest, it has a tendency to be less painful. And then they make the decision whether
So can I ask you, is that footage unedited? Is that real?
It's absolutely real.
Okay, so let's. Can you run me through the
Okay,
link and
when
how we got to
found
that
it, I
film?
found it in the woods when I was picking up his body.
Mhm.
It was laying in the brush on the ground. I don't know if he was wearing it. I assume he was, and I think maybe when Susie grabbed him, it may have come off during that fight or while he was throwing her back and forth. That's an assumption. He's never completely answered to that. I asked what it was. He said, "It's my communication." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, my superiors know where I am. They know what I'm doing when I'm wearing it. And they can audit him and change what he's doing." And I said, "Well," I said, "I have the feeling, that you told me how to put it on." And he said, "Yes, I did." And I
But
said, "Why?" I said,
this is
"Why?"
after though, right?
Well, this is within the first year of being gone from Seattle and him coming back and talking to me.
But how did you sort of because you obviously had the link when Freddy was still in the freezer, right? So
Okay.
how did you discover what it was? What
Okay.
made you decide to put it on, and what
The
happened with that?
well, the timeline is difficult to explain. But when I left Seattle on that 11th day and drove away for 10 months, I had it with me. I had it in the car. I had it in an old coffee can wrapped up with a piece of material around it. And I took it and I buried it in this park in Vancouver, Stanley Park, which is all wooded and huge and
Yeah,
beautiful.
I've been there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I ended up living in that park with a bunch of homeless guys who taught me how to survive, who taught me how to go out and get food and what to do and where not to go, where police would bother you, and then other places where they'd leave you alone. So I took that as an education. I learned how to survive out in the woods. And I even taught them some things about how you can go into a hospital. And if you're honest with the people, generally they'll give you a meal for free. If you're kind and, sensitive. And so that was my existence. But I had that with me. And the first day I went to Vancouver, and I had been in Stanley Park a lot in my youth. My dad used to go up to Vancouver all the time, and we'd go with him for the weekend. I knew an area in Stanley Park that I really liked, and it was wooded, and it wasn't an area that people really went to. So I went there intentionally to bury this can. And I dug a hole next to this big tree and put it in the ground. and buried it and thought, it's out of my hands. I don't want to deal with it. Because I knew people were looking for evidence. I knew they had been through my house, trashed Gary's house, done all these things.
Had you worn it once at this point? You'd
No,
never tried it on?
no, not at
Right.
that point.
Yeah.
I just kept it in the ground for a month. And I ended up taking it out. And I think I just did it to make sure it was there all by myself, nobody else around. And then I put it back, left it in the can. And so for 10 months, it was in the ground. It was buried. I didn't touch it. I didn't do anything with it. And Freddie had come and seen me during this time. And he kept saying something. He kept saying, do you have my, and what I understood was arm. Do you have my arm? And finally I said, do you mean the silver medal? I drew a picture of it. And he said, yes, my arm. That's my arm. Meaning that was to go on his arm. That's what I understood. And I said, yes, I have it. Do you want it back? I would like to give it back to you. And he said, no, this is for you to keep. And he said, my elders want you to keep and know this, and keep this safe. And I said, well, it's buried in the ground. I said, do you want me to tell you where it's at? And he said, no, I don't want to know. He said, nobody should know. So when I decided to go back with the people who contacted me and said, we'll help you, we'll put you in a hotel, we'll give you money if you need it, those people that I call the Alliance, I went and dug it up and brought it back and showed it to them. And I said, do you want this? If you want this, to take it, to keep it safe, that's fine. And they
offered it to them,
yes,
the Alliance.
Yes. And they said, no, we want you to keep it. It was given to you. That's an important thing. That's really important that they allowed you to keep it.
It sounds like they know something, like they know about this species or this item, the way that they're letting you
they
keep
did.
it.
They do know of them. But a lot of the information, they asked me, will you work with us? Will you tell us more about your involvement with Freddie? And I said, sure, because they were helping me. They fed me. They brought me back to health. Like I said, I hadn't taken a shower in a month maybe. And they allowed me to come back and have more of a normal life. And they wanted to help me in every way. They helped me to talk to my parents, while I was away in Vancouver, in a safe way, on a safe phone, a satellite telephone. They went to my house and talked to my parents and said, we are helping him, because they knew I had to run away. They knew that because they were trashing my parents' house. They were burning effigies, just trying to torment my parents, my elderly parents. And I didn't want that. That's why I left town. And they said, well, we'll help them too. We'll make them understand that you're okay. And they even went and talked to my aunt and uncle, who were like a separate set of parents, who were younger than my parents. And they were very helpful. They were very much involved in this.
Are they still around today?
Yes.
The Alliance?
Yes, they are.
Are you in contact with them still?
Yes. But they also didn't like a bunch of things I did. Because,
like what?
Well, I decided to come out. I decided to come back and tell my story. I went on Art Bell and told the entire story. I was on his radio show 7 times, and on one time it was 5 hours long, nonstop.
Why didn't they like that?
Well, they didn't want this information out that way. They said I could write it down and that I should chronicle it, and I did that as well. I had a 1,500-page ring notebook of everything that I wanted to say, everything that had happened that I could imagine and remember. they said that you should take that to somebody who can help you write it, help you put it together. That's when they gave me the name of Robert Wraith, who was my writing author, co-author. He flew to Seattle. I came back from Vancouver. He got an apartment, and I ended up living with him for the next year and a half. And he fed me. He helped me regain a lot of my life. I mean, nobody had, I had lost about 100 pounds, and I was sick, and I was, wasn't in good shape. And he
Yeah.
helped bring me back. I mean, he lived in an area. He got an apartment that was an area within walking distance of a lot of restaurants and a lot of stores, and he provided the money for me to eat. And uh, I went to the doctor a couple of times, and he made sure I was taken care of. I mean,
Right.
he became my confidant in my.
And is
So
he still alive?
no, he's not. In
And what happened to him?
2020, he died mysteriously in his home, and he had gone back to California to do some work there. And I had a place to live that was pretty safe at that point. Um, and a friend of his who knew him well called me and said, Robert died. And I said, what do you mean he died? He says, well, he, in his sleep, it looks like. And the coroner came and said that he had like a massive heart attack. He was a little overweight, but I don't believe that it was natural. I
Mm.
believe they killed him because of what he has done for me and with me. We were writing another book, second book. We'd already done one that was distributed worldwide.
Right. So you were working with him when this happened.
Yes, yes.
And
I
do you
mean,
not fear that
he was
something like
he
this
was
could
my
happen to you?
he was my confidant. We did everything together. I mean, we went around the world 3 times together, telling about this story, talking to other people. Um, I ended up talking with the Pope Francis, who invited me to come to the Vatican to tell my
Right.
story to him. He wanted to know about this. He had heard this, or somebody in his group had heard this on the radio at a podcast that I did in Italy. And
Hmm.
they got to me. They said, this is what we'd like to do. We'd like to invite you. And we stayed in the Vatican. We stayed in their area where they put people up. It's almost
When
like
was it? What year was this?
2013.
Wow, so this is recent. Do you have any photographs of being there with him that you can
Yeah,
share?
yeah, I do.
Yeah, please,
People end
please
up
do.
saying they end up saying, "Oh, it's fake. You put it in Photoshop," and well, how do you answer to that? You just say you can think what you want.
Hmm.
But I've got a paper invitation that's hand scribed by the Vatican archive people that invited us. They invited my team. I took 4 people with me, and we all stayed in the Vatican for 4 days.
Let's circle back to the link though, because I want to
Okay.
understand how you ended up. Because I think you were on 2 different TV shows. One of them was the time where you did that demonstration, and then there was another talking panel, or is this the same show?
Well, there was one. Jaime Maussan brought me to Mexico uh, a year after I had come out and done all of the Art Bell shows and done a bunch of conferences in the United States. And Jaime said, I want you to come to Mexico and I want to interview you on TV. And I at that point, Josh, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was right or wrong. All I know is, I was telling this story. I had started selling the book. It sold really well. So all of a sudden I had some finance. And I thought, okay, I can't get relicensed as a doctor because they won't relicense me, so I have to do something else. So this is what I did. The book sold really well. I thought it wouldn't. And when it first came out, I thought, who's going to buy this thing? But it literally sold off of our shelves. We sold 25,000 books within 2 months when it came out.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing when you think of it. And I had 3 publishers tell me they wouldn't touch it, they wouldn't print it, they wouldn't do anything. So finally, I talked to a guy in a smaller publishing situation, and I said, "Here's what I'm working with. This is what I can do. I can pay you to print X number of books." And so he did that to begin with. And then after the money started coming in, he just continually produced them.
Right.
And
Right. And
and
this is what led you to meeting with Jaime Maussan?
well, part of it was I had met one of his, I guess you would say, agents or co-producers of his show. Jaime is a very skilled, what shall we say, salesman. He has, since I've known him, he now owns his own TV station and network and studios. So he's done really well. During the time I went and saw him and did this show in Mexico, which I didn't know ahead of time what it was going to be like, he has since rebuilt his organization really well. He's done really well, and I salute him for this. We
Do
don't
you
get
trust him?
along. We don't get along completely
Why?
because he promised me some things that he never fulfilled. He promised me that if I shared my photography and video with him, that he could use it for a year under a certain situation that we agreed to in his office, which that he would pay me a percentage of his intake, his income from all of those conferences, which there were about 35 of them, all in Mexico and South America, where he used my material. And I thought, well, that's fine because I can't do anything with it. I mean, this is a great opportunity. But he ended up not completely fulfilling his end of it financially. He basically stopped paying me, and I got a hold of his accountant that had just been fired, and he told me what Jaime had made during that year, his income, and it was over $3 million US dollars.
Wow. And this
So
is late 90s, early 2000s?
it's the early 2000s. And the guy also told me that Jaime was not paying taxes in the right way, like income tax. He was not paying it. So he said, if you want to use this against him, that's the way to go after him. And so actually, I hired a law firm and we did sue him. And I said, if you don't pay me, then I'm going to have to turn this over to your IRS, basically. And so after 2 months, he finally started to pay me, and I got, some more money. But it never was the right amount.
He's I guess central with this new like Boogosphere case as well. I don't know if you've seen
Right?
that. It's
Oh
like this.
yes, yeah, I've heard about it. And
What do you think about
you
that,
said
given that you sort of know him?
well, you said, do I trust him?
Yeah.
Okay, the answer to that is no. I trust him to do exactly what I think he would do in every situation. If there's a dollar to be made, he'll find a way to make it. Any way possible. Do I believe that this Boogosphere thing is a real item, a real tangible, like the Link artifact? Probably is. It probably is genuine. There's things about it that they have divulged as far as the metallurgy. Now, I know something about that because I took the Link artifact to Japan and had their metallurgy department at the University of Osaka go through it and take samples of it, scrapings of the material, both on top and below. And it's made out of some materials that are from this earth, but some that cannot be identified at all.
Completely unknown.
Completely unknown. At least 20% of it.
Wow.
Its design is like a sandwich. If you put a whole bunch of layers together, like 15 layers, some of them are made of what looks like plant material, like a leaf. And that is set up like a circuit board. So it's a living biological mechanical device. It has a power source that is a piece of uranium that pulses every so many seconds, that it can be identified. It can be actually, it radiates itself. Okay. Not enough to kill you, but enough to power its source.
So how did you figure out that this thing had a use case? Like, did you just decide to put it on one day? We kind of got a bit sidetracked at that point.
Okay.
When did you first put it on and why?
I was sitting in the apartment after I had, months and months after I had met Robert. Robert had seen it. I kept it in this, I know it's weird, but I just kept it in this coffee can and put it in the corner of the room. And one day I was sitting there just like in the afternoon with him, talking to him at like a dining room table. And I went over and got the can, opened it, and just set it in front of us, where I just looked at it. And it's unique. It's really an interesting design. Some people think it's just perfectly flat, but it's not. It's actually contoured in its design when you really look at it close up. It's almost like it's a sculpture to look at it. And I was sitting there just looking at it, and I was kind of looking at the underside of it. And all of a sudden, I just took it like this, and I set it on my arm. And just setting it there, it closed tight like a vice around my arm. And I thought, oh, shit. And I couldn't get it off. You could not pull it off when it's tight. And I was just sitting there with it, trying to get it off. And all of a sudden it opened and I could lift it off. So it didn't do anything other than it got tight on my wrist. How did I know to put it on my wrist? I don't know. He never told me that. He never said this is how it should be used. I just had a feeling. And later on, I was thinking about it, and I think I was told how to use it. I think that information was stuck in my head somewhere by Freddie. I think somehow in the early days, it was put in my head what it was. And that not that I could access that memory or that information, but it was in my head that this thing had something to do with communication for him.
Right.
And
but you didn't experience this, vanishing effect that we see in this film at that time.
No.
So when did this happen?
Well, it happened in a very crucial moment. I had gotten a phone call from some people who knew Gary, who were related to my friend Gary. Gary had been gone. I had not spoke to him for over a year and a half. I figured he was dead or hiding or something, because we both left town at about the same time. And he went a different direction. I went north to Canada, and he went somewhere south. And I figured he was going to go to relatives or something. Anyway, these relatives called me and said, "We need to talk to you about Gary." And I said, "Okay, what's going on? Where are you? Who are you? Who do you identify yourself?" And they gave me some specifics. that I knew from Gary talking to me that nobody else would know. And they basically told me where he was, and I knew this place. I had known that Gary had been to these relatives' house before, and it was in Arizona. And I got in the car that I had and drove nonstop to where they told me he was. When I got there, he was dying. He had been beaten with like a metal pipe in the head, and he was dying. He couldn't move, he couldn't walk, he couldn't do anything. I went to the hospital where he was. These people were his relatives. He had gone there and they put him in the hospital like 4 or 5 days beforehand. I went and saw him and he was in terrible shape. He could barely talk. And he told me, he says, I just want to die. And I said, no, you don't. You want to, you're going to get better. I was encouraging him and he said, no. He said, I don't want to go through this anymore. And I was sad. I was, it was just miserable to hear somebody say they just want to die. And I left there and went back to where his relatives were and was going to sleep and couldn't sleep. And all of a sudden I got this feeling in my head. I get this weird feeling in my head. And Freddie showed up there, right there in front of me. And he said, you have to use my device. You have to use this to help your friend. And I said, I don't know what you mean. And he said, yes, you do. You know inside your head, you know how to do this. And I said, I don't. He said, yes, you do. And then he disappeared. Well, I pulled this thing out of my suitcase, satchel that I had. It had the device in it. I pulled it out. I put it on my arm. And I went to where Gary was. I went from their house, that bedroom, to where Gary was. And I was there in the room with him, just miraculously, just in a second. And I walked over to him. I put my hands on him, on his arm. And I had this thing on my arm. And both of us miraculously disappeared into this energy bubble. And I took him to wherever this place was. And I can't identify it very well other than saying it's a round room. It's about 50 feet wide and about 60, 70 feet high. And there's two energy beings inside of this place. And they are Freddie's superiors.
Okay, I just want to ask, so you wore this in his presence and he came with
me.
you?
Yeah.
Did you have to touch him? Like, how
yes,
did he come
yes,
with you?
I grabbed his arm. I put my hand on his arm. And we both instantly became involved in this energy. And
right.
in about...
So it's kind of similar to when you touched the black obelisk thing?
Similar, but much more sophisticated. This energy bubble that you're in, you can see it, you can feel it. It's almost like it's touching you, but it is definitely a bubble around your body, your whole body. And it was around me and him. I mean,
and you're still in the room, or you're somewhere else though?
No, it's during the transition. It's from going to point A to point B.
Right.
I went to point B, which is this big round room with these energy beings in it. And I started to think, can you help me? I started to think that in my head. Can you help him? And they immediately surrounded him, his body, with this gold and red and orange energy. I mean, instantly. And he just was glowing, laying on the floor. And he was alive. And he said, yes, yes, please, yes, yes. That's what he kept saying. And he didn't say what. He just said yes, yes. and they took his body away. They just
These energy beings.
these energy beings took
Why?
his body away, and
Why do you call them energy beings? Like, can you
because they
describe what they
don't
look like?
have any solid features. They are just glowing, bright energy, like big tubes of energy. And they occasionally have an appendage, but they don't have a face. And all I can say is, trying to turn off something. All I can say is they're very powerful and very much inside you all the time. You don't ask for anything. They already know what you're thinking. They're in your head
Interesting.
like Freddy is, but more so. And they said, "We will take him. We will care for him." And I'm standing there crying, thinking, this is insane. What's going on? They're taking him. His body is dissolving in front of me into this energy. And they're saying, "It's okay. It's all right. He'll be okay." So within a minute or two, this big bubble out this big window area of where this round room is, there opened a big wall, opened up, and I see all these bubbles, like a field. If you can imagine a field 500-600 feet wide and long, full of these big bubbles, and they're moving. They're just floating kind of around, and all of a sudden, they tell me, "Ask for Gary. Ask for Gary." And they're just repeating that over and over. And I said, "Gary, where are you? Gary, Gary." And all of a sudden, one of those bubbles came floating from way far away, right back in front of me. And I mean, we're talking about a 6-foot bubble. And it just was him. It was him inside, healthy, not sick, not beat up, no more bandages on his head. And I said, "Where are you? What's happening?" And he said, "I am where I need to be. I am home." He said, "I am home. I can no longer be with you that way." So they processed him into this energy, into his soul energy. That's what he was. That's what these bubbles were. It was a whole huge field of people. Of energy souls.
Right, and this is the first time you sort of began to understood what this bracelet is capable of.
Yes, I knew at that point that it was a communication device. It was allowing you to interact with the superiors who make the choice. You don't make the choice, they make the choice. It's like somebody calling them and saying, "I have a situation, can you help me?" They make the decision. Okay.
Do you have an idea of what that, I guess we can call it, like, dimension is?
No.
You know,
No,
you don't know?
I mean, if I would speculate, which I have for years, could you call it heaven? Possibly.
Yeah.
Could you
Depends
call
where you
it?
come from.
Could you call it definitely a different dimension and a different condition of these people? Because these people are all in these bubbles that you can't recognize until you call them. If you call them, then they will come to you, and then they will materialize. And you can talk to them just like I'm talking to you. Exactly the same. It's miraculous, Josh. It's incredible. I can't tell you how fantastic it was. Not only because of what it was, but they helped my friend. They took away the pain. And he said, "I'm better now. This is where I belong." And he said, "I'm with my brother." Well, his brother had died like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's like saying, "I'm in heaven."
Yeah. But did he actually die?
Yes.
Or is this right? So
Well,
this is
he died as far as a human being. Okay. His physical body was no more, was gone.
Yeah. I understand.
Because it was beat to death. They killed him.
Yeah.
And who killed him? The men in black killed him. Just like they beat me up and put me in a van and filled me full of heroin one time. You know, I got no respect for these kind of people.
Of course. No, of
They should
course.
all be put in the ground. And I've done my part to do that. I will tell you the truth. I've done things that I wish I hadn't done, but I did it in defense of myself and my friends. You know, 14 people are dead because of me. I wear this every day. I wake up and think those people are gone because they tried to help me, because they put themselves in harm's way.
Do you still fear that you could be next, though?
Oh,
Because
yes, I do, but I don't fear it. In some ways, I welcome it. I mean, I've decided that they could kill me any day, anywhere. You know, anybody can. Somebody pushed me down the stairs about a week ago out in a mall, and I fell down 16 cement stairs. And then the guy at the top of the stairs said, "I told you not to do this." And what they were talking about is the new film that's out, you know, Contact in the Woods. They told me not to do it, not to release it. Well,
well,
it's out there.
yeah, well, I hope you do stay safe.
Well, I do my best. Look, I've learned a lot since the first day in the woods. I've learned that, you know, there's crazy people out there that would like to shut me up, but they don't seem to want to kill me. And I think part of that is I've let so much information out and I've gone all around the world talking about this. If they make me a martyr, it'll be just worse for them.
You've also said in previous interviews, I've heard you mention that you sort of believe that some of your safety is related to the actual link itself, and that's why I keep kind of circling back to it because
That's possible. That is possible. That could be a safety uh, insurance for me because of Freddie. But remember, Freddie is a safety thing too. He's intervened several times to protect me. I mean, out of the middle of nowhere, he's stepped in.
I want to ask you a few more things just about that, but I just want you to explain to me because we keep getting sidetracked. Tell me about this footage that we've seen, the footage that I said and that you agreed. It's hard to believe when you look at it of
Okay.
you basically disappearing on camera. What's
Okay.
happening there? Who's in the room?
Let me set the stage here. I had met a guy who was an associate producer in this little television station outside of Toronto. I met him in a conference. I was back east doing a conference in Pennsylvania. And he was one of the people in the audience, came up, talked to me, said, "Hey, you know, if you ever want to talk about this or talk about this device, let me know. I'll put you on the show." And I laughed, you know, and I thought, "Oh, yeah, right. Just another opportunity for me to get beat up." But that's how it first started. Well, he called me about a month later. And he called and said, "Hey, a guy just backed out doing our show tomorrow. So I got an opening. If you want to do it, come and do it. Come and show your thing." I thought, okay. And I was kind of crazy at the last moment and said, "I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do it. You know, it's an opportunity. I could be dead next week. So I'm just going to do it." I've got this kind of weird mentality that I've adopted is if it feels right, you should do it. You know, don't hesitate. You should do it. And this felt right. So I gathered my team, you know, 5 people. We all got in the airplane. We flew to Toronto and made a phone call, and they met us with a limousine. We all got in, and they all took us to the studio. And he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, what do you want to see?" And he said, "Well, are you going to use that thing? You're going to turn it on?" I said, "Well, I can try." I said, "It doesn't always work. It doesn't always function. But I said, I'll give it a try." And he says, "Okay, I'll set you up. You come over here on the panel." And I said, "No, I don't want to sit on that panel. I want to sit over here." I said, "Bring me a camera guy that will stay on me through the whole thing, no matter what. He's got to focus on me. He can't cut away. I don't want it to be, taped together. So I just want a one shot and let it go, no matter what happens. And so he introduced me. He talked a little bit about it with the audience. There was about 200 people in the audience. This was a live show.
What was the show called?
Like Afternoon with Murray or something like that.
Okay.
It was just a little talk show, just a local thing. Anyway, so he introduces me. I get on camera. I say, hi, my name is, and I tell the story briefly of how I found this, and this is what I think it does. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I took it out. I showed it. It was on camera, close up. You've got some of that footage. And I put it on my arm and I said, this is how it works. You put it on and you feel it when it starts to work. You feel this throbbing in your chest, almost like you're having a heart attack. And that feeling starts to radiate through your whole body, your arms and your legs. And it's just like you're shaken. It was almost like what Freddie was doing in the forest. And that feeling is painful because the needles penetrate your arm and into your muscles and into your nerves. It hurts for a minute and then it gets cold like dry ice. I mean, cold, 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 like frozen. And that pain goes away, but the throbbing inside of your body keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, you're inside of this energy bubble and you're gone. And that's it. Now, I've never seen it on the outside except what I saw on the video of what they shot. And that energy bubble encases your complete body and then it drifts away like a big bubble of energy. And they shot it, one camera, never took it away, let me go away, and then it came back. Came back within, I think it was like 2 minutes. And it came back and put me right back in the chair. And I had the same connection, everything. It hurt really, really bad. It definitely, I don't think is designed for us. But it worked. It functioned on camera.
So 200 people were sitting there watching this. Like, I
Yes.
feel like, has anyone ever spoken out about it? And
Oh
also, like,
yeah,
if
a
it's
lot of
filmed,
people said it's the best magic trick I've ever seen.
right? And like, did it go on the news?
No.
Like,
No. People talked about it on the internet for a while, and some people said, "Oh, it's really cool. It was really amazing." Some people were afraid of what happened because they said they thought it was like demonic, and it's not. But people don't know. Us humans, we don't know about this stuff. We don't know what to think. It's miraculous when you see this in front of you, and that's
yeah,
what
it's hard to
everybody.
believe. Yeah.
And that's what everybody said. Everybody said everything from it's a magic trick to it's godlike, that it's a miracle. And I don't think it's a miracle. I think it's technology. Okay. That's what I believe. It's truly technology, but it's so advanced from what we can think about that it looks miraculous.
Yeah.
But it was photographed and it absolutely was what happened. It absolutely was not cut away. It wasn't anything. I mean, I've heard everybody saying, oh, it was a sparkler or it was a welding torch, that was photographed. Well, none of that was in the studio.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that there's that saying as well, right? Like, sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic.
Well, but see, I agree with that.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is. It
absolutely.
truly is miraculous. But after you see some of the other things and you start to understand that it is a form of technology, it is truly a form of technology. And I have to say this, it's not what you put on your wrist that's doing the magic. It's the superiors who are running this thing. Like they've got some big, huge machine somewhere that's reaching down and grabbing me, that's causing this effect to happen. So it's not the thing that's on my arm. That's only like a communicator or a doorbell. It's It's the process of the superiors who are unbelievably advanced. I mean, I think by what Freddie said, they're a million years ahead of where humanity is. And I've asked him, and he's even said, some of us are you. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, some of us are from the future that come back here and do the work.
Like future humans coming back.
Right.
Interesting.
And I said, well, what about the superiors? I said, they're just energy, just all this energy. And he said, they are advanced as their life can be. They are at the top of the life form, and they control unbelievable things. They are unbelievably powerful. They can control even planet movements, I was told.
Wow. So do you have the link still?
Well, let me tell you how I've survived it not being stolen.
Yeah.
I have a team of people that I call, people say, oh, it's the Reed team. All
Is
these
this the
people,
Alliance?
No, this is my private little source.
Uh-huh.
All of these guys are ex-patriots. They're all Marines. They're all Army guys. They're Green Berets and SEALs and all of those different kinds of things. They go with me almost everywhere. So much so that I end up saying, give me a break. Stay in the car. Let me walk up into the store, And when I do, that's when the bad shit happens. Okay. That's when I got pushed down the stairs. I mean, I just about broke both of my legs. I can hardly walk around straight because of the injury that I had. And I'm not a young guy. People say, well, how old are you? Well, I'm 80. And
looking good for 80.
Sometimes I feel older. Sometimes I feel, like I shouldn't even move. I shouldn't even be able to walk around. But hey, thank God I have been able to continue. And I will say it. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe we can get help from those sources. And I'm not saying that they're that far removed from Freddie. There's some degree of spiritualism within him, within the superiors, that have allowed me to take care of certain things. They've saved me. They've allowed me to continue. People say, well, couldn't they just kill you? I said, sure, they could kill me. But I got a lot of things in place that if they kill me, it probably will get worse, because there's a whole lot of stuff that I know that the bad guys don't want out.
I was going to ask you, is there anything that you haven't really said about your story that's maybe developed, or since then you feel more comfortable sharing?
Well, I can tell what I'm talking about right now is that the bad guys that I call the dark government or dark agents are NSA and DOD people. I know that because I've had to deal with them in a close situation where they were forced to tell me information. Instead of me being tortured, I put them under the knife because I wanted them to know that I'm as serious as they are. I got nothing to lose. You want to kill me? That's fine. I've had a great life. I've had a great time. And I believe that when I go, I'll be up there with Gary and my other friends that are dead. I believe that now. I never believed that before this situation in 1996. I never believed in that. But I've been proven that there's another place where our soul energy goes and that we can interact with other people. And it's a whole nother dimension.
There's definitely some comfort in that, for sure.
Exactly.
And I agree. I agree with everything you're saying as well.
So they're basically telling me that I'm being educated to be able to tell this story. And if people don't want to believe it, that's okay. Like I've always said, if I hadn't have seen it myself, been there, touched all the evidence, and been taken in and out of this dimension, I wouldn't believe it either. But it's true. We have a we have a reason to live this life. We have a reason. We need to live it fully. We need to have every experience we can ever have, because once we're done, we take all that knowledge with us. And when we're in that bubble field, we share that. We share what we've experienced. And it's a huge thing. I mean, if you waste your life, that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like knowing the capability of what this link can do and what you've experienced with it, I feel like there must be temptation to use it more. Like, is it something you've used
Well,
recently?
well, let me just say this, okay? I know enough about it and had learned enough about the superiors who it came from, where I know now that it's a sacred item. That's how I think about it. That's what Freddie has said. You have been chosen to take care of this. Because I've tried to give it back to them, the superiors, everybody, time and time again. I've said, I don't want this. I don't want the responsibility. They said, you need to care for this. You will need to use this. Okay.
Right.
When they tell you that, you got to think long and hard about the fact that they have the power to take your life in a second. They could wipe us all out. But we're here for a reason. We're here to
Mm,
live the life and gather information which goes with us in the end. I mean, we have another life to live, so to speak. It's different.
yeah.
It's very different, but we continue. People say, "Well, do you think there's a life after this?" And well, it's different, but we do continue.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I would have never agreed with that if I hadn't have experienced this.
Mm,
I just didn't have that faith. I didn't have that ability. But now I know there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to the link, I'm sure. And I think there's a lot more to this life than we give credit. That
absolutely.
we need to experience everything we can. We need to understand that other life is important, whether it's small or big. They believe in a superior being like God. They believe that. They believe there's one superior being for all life in all of the universes, plural. So they're telling me this. These are these things that are so incredibly intelligent, that when you're with them, you don't have to say anything. They already know what's in your head. They know what you're asking. They know everything. And they're so gentle to us because we are something important to them. They are involved with caring for our lives, probably in the aftermath, in the other dimension. But they see us as a sacred being. And they say all life is important and sacred. And this artifact, they want me to care for it. So what I've done, I have this team of people, I give it to one, and then he goes out and gives it to somebody else and gives it to somebody else, and I have no idea where it is. I have
Oh, so
one.
you don't know where the link is right now?
No, no, and I don't want to, because they can't take me out and torture me and say they're going to get it, because I don't know where it is. I have one phone number to call. That guy calls somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, and finally it can be retrieved. But that's the
Interesting.
only safeguard I can have.
Do you think there could be a reason or a time where you feel like you will need to retrieve it?
Yes, they have told me that.
When?
Well, they have said there will be a time. That's it.
Right. You're not sure what that looks like or when that
I've
is.
I've used it 6 times. 6 times. And each time I've got more information about them, the superiors, Freddie, their life, what they're doing, why they're here, why they wanted to protect us. Is that the life is so important. That the soul energy that we have is so important that it's priceless, and they are here to protect that. And I even have said, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what this is. And they said, well, you have to start to dig deep inside of yourself and start to feel this energy. And I believe, Josh, that I can do that. I believe I can dig inside of my head and I can find this sacred energy. I think I can feel it. Never before could I do that, but it's a process. It's kind of like exercising. You have to get your head in the right place, and some people say it's like meditation, and start digging deeper and deeper, and finally you can get to this point where it's like you're opening the door to a miraculous peaceful place that you're putting on your head and your body, and you can feel it. You can actually feel it. It's tangible.
You
and
should
and
teach people this. You should teach people. I think that could benefit humanity.
Well, people do teach this. People do teach meditation, and they do teach, the survival of the body and the soul. But I'm only one person, Josh, and people, don't want me to talk about this,
Yeah,
and I'm honored to be able to tell you what I feel and how it's working. And I understand when people don't want to believe it. I get it. I mean, there's also an area of this that's a little bit scary, even scary
for
to
sure.
me, even to
Absolutely.
me. And it's an ongoing learning process.
Yeah. And I've got one last question for you, and I think it flows on
Yes,
kind of beautifully from what we were just speaking about. In older interviews, you've stated how much when you've spoken to other countries around the world, I guess, in Japan and other countries as well, they're far more receptive to the idea of non-human intelligence or life beyond humans being here. But in America, there's basically zero cooperation and
right,
seemingly like a military apparatus designed
right.
to suppress anyone speaking about it.
Yes.
After all this time, do you have any conclusions or speculations on why that is and what's going on with America specifically?
I think it's a political situation. I think the politics of the government and governments around the world, and I don't mean the government that we vote for. I mean the inner workings of the dark forces that control a lot of things that we don't know about. I mean, there are millions, if not billions, of dollars that go to dark projects that nobody knows what those are. Okay. I believe those are the things that people, superiors, are concerned about, worried about. I think they worry that there's a possibility that the world population could be destroyed by somebody making an accident with nuclear weapons.
But why
I have some
why
predictions. I have some predictions that I've learned that people can poo poo all they want. They can say, "Oh no, that'll never happen." I mean, I predicted all of the attempts to kill Donald Trump, all of them, and
is this documented anywhere or is it
well, I've written it down. I've
personally?
talked to other people about it.
Right.
you know but this is the ongoing process that I live with, is having to know this information. I know that there's going to be two more attempts and one might be fatal.
On
I know
Donald
there's
Trump.
going to be another fatal attempt on one of his children.
And how do you know this? Do you feel like this is information that has
This is
just come to
information that
you?
I've gotten from Freddie, and he's gotten from his superiors. And I asked him, well, how can we prove this? How can we know this? And like I said, time after time, I knew ahead of time when Trump was going to be attempted assassination. I knew that. And other people around me knew that ahead of time. Okay. Can I go and tell them what I know? Some of it, and some of it I have. I've gone to people in the military and people in the Congress, told them my story, told them what I know, told them my experiences. They've listed them. They've even done some investigation and basically listed my case as genuine and authentic.
Is that anyone who's currently in the Congress? Because there's this
Yes,
big sort of
yes,
congressional movement
yes.
at the moment.
Yeah,
Would it be anyone that we know?
Luna,
You've
Paulina
spoken to
Luna.
her.
Well, I've given them all my stuff. I went in and did an interview and gave them all this information.
Oh,
Spent
wow. So
4
you've sat with them.
hours giving them this information, showing them my evidence, showing them what I've gone through and what I've had to live through and what I have to prove that this, I mean, the photographic evidence is proof. People don't think it is because you guys live in the world of digital. Well, this isn't digital. This is hard film that can be analyzed and looked at, and they have done that. Okay? That's what people don't realize. They think, oh, if you see it on the net, it could be some manipulated thing. Well, that's true. It could be, but it's not. Okay? And where I came from, where I came from way back when in 96, and all my schooling and all my education and all my accreditation and all my bank accounts were gone, were erased. Okay? Ask yourself the question, who has the ability to do that?
Yeah, that's right.
So there's my proof right there. That's proof. That's a big time proof. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in a blink of an eye. I had to sue the bank that lost my money. And then they fired a couple of the people that worked there because they stood up for me. So I got some of that money back, but not all of it. I didn't get my life back. I still can't work. I can't get relicensed because you have to have a license as a physician, you know, but I can't do that. Every time I apply for it, it gets just pigeonholed somewhere and I never get an answer. And I've done that probably at least 15 times in different states. I could work in Mexico as a physician, but I didn't really want to do that. That wasn't where my family
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. No, it's serious. There are definitely big, powerful organizations that are
That
running
killed my
campaigns to
parents. That killed my parents.
really
That
your parents
murdered my
were involved in
parents.
this
Yeah.
as well. Wow.
So when people say, "Oh, well, you should just not talk about this. You should just go away and live your life." Well,
I'm sorry to
I
hear that.
would if I could, but I can't. I don't have anything else other than this. And this is important. This is an important thing for everyone. It's not just about me. It's about all of us. It's about the evolution of mankind that we need to evolve. And we have chances to re-educate ourselves and dig down deep and find where we need to be consciously. We need to change that consciousness and expand. We have the ability, we have help. There are beings like Freddie's superiors that will help us, but they're waiting for us to dig down to that point. And we're the ones that aren't doing it.
It's a great sentiment. I completely agree with everything you've said. It's a good note to end on. But I did remember one quick question I want to ask you, and we can keep this one very quick.
Yes, sir.
I noticed in the footage between when you're in the woods versus in the garage, it appears like Freddy has a completely different skin tone. In the woods, in the footage, it looks like
Yes. Yeah,
he's gray.
when he was in the woods, he was grayish blue.
Yeah.
When he was kind of a grayish blue color. As the time went by, as 9 hours went by, and I put him in the freezer, his skin tone started to change and it got darker and it continued to get darker. And when he finally reanimated himself, it was dark to begin with. And all the pictures I had taken once he was laying on the floor, it was this darker skin color. Well, I decided that it must be the freezer. It must be the factor of if you put something, a piece of meat in the freezer, it changes color. When you first take it in, it's red and vibrant looking. When you put it in the freezer, it turns brown as it
Yeah.
freezes. Well, the freezer may have been conducive to him reanimating. I don't know, but it
When he
certainly did.
reanimated, did his skin tone shift back to
Yeah,
bluish?
well, it got lighter. It got lighter. When he comes now, it's more like it was in the forest. Not exactly. And I still can see the bone cap from his scar on his head. It's still there. So I can identify him in a group. He came one time with three of his friends. They all look similar, but just a little bit different. Just the same way you and I are. We're, we're white skinned, uh, Caucasian, but I can tell the difference between you and somebody else just by looking at you. Well, the same thing goes for him. Same thing with their race. Some of them, some of the grays wear a suit that is a facial complete cover, like a helmet, that has the big eyes and doesn't blink at all. They're inside of it. So those guys are not the ones that are like Freddie. Freddie was designed to work in our atmosphere, to breathe our atmosphere, and to be able to fend off all of the bacteria and the little critters that we've become used to. Through our evolution, we've become used to that. I mean, if you want to look at Freddie and say he's like a robot, he's like a biological robot, well, he is, but he's got a personality. He has a personal personality that's different from the rest of it. Because three of them were in front of me. They were all talking with me at about a million miles an hour, but I could tell which one was which. I could feel it in my head. So there's a
Wow.
difference. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe, Josh, I believe that telepathic ability is something we all can do. It's in us. We just have to learn how to pull it out, because I've done it with other humans. In the last 30
Really?
years, I've been able to do that with other people and say, they'll like be walking across the room and I'll say, well, do you want to go to the store now? And they said, how do you know? How do you know I was going to do that? I get those messages. I get what they're talking about. They can just sit across the room and think things, and I can tell you what they're thinking. So I've learned how to do this. But I believe, and he's told me, anybody can do this. It's just
Yeah.
learning how to do it. It's like a
Yeah.
foreign language, learning how
Yeah.
to use it. So we have incredible abilities. We're just not using them. And
I agree.
we're also extremely spiritual beings, but we don't think about it. We don't put that on the forefront of our mind, but we should. We should and use that because we're connected. We're connected to other spiritual beings. And if people want to say, well, that's just another religion. Well, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the actual connectivity between beings, between living beings that are around us. There's also a bunch of things that are around us we can't see that are in another dimension, but they're here. They're like everywhere. I mean, I was told you can't go anywhere alone. You're never alone. There's always these things around you. But this is an important thing for all of us, Josh. It's not just about me. And when people say, oh, I think you're just out for the money, well, I need to eat too. And I found ways to make that happen. Uh, so should I be punished for that? I mean, I wrote a book with another man that we didn't know if it would ever sell, and it did. It went crazy because of circumstances that I was lucky enough to be in with Art Bell, to get that message out, to be with Jaime Maussan, to make that international. I mean, you realize I'm the first person to ever bring an artifact on an international television show and show it. That's the very first time. I'm the first person that has ever shown clear, bright pictures of an alien being. And I got the DNA and blood samples and chromosome study of it. I mean, who else has that? And when people say, oh, well, you don't have any proof, what do you want? You know, I mean, if I put him in front of you, see, this is another thing. I've told people, be careful what you say because he could come and visit you. I was talking to a guy, uh, Michael Rawson. I don't know if you know him, but
No.
he's from back east, from Maine, long ways from me. And we did this. We did a podcast. We talked about it. I said, Freddie has said he likes to visit people. He likes to visit people that know me, that talk to me. And so 2 weeks went by. He called and said, holy shit, Freddie was here. He appeared right in my armchair. He was here for 15 minutes and then he just disappeared. He told me he'd had this big conversation with me.
Wow.
And he's come back 2 or 3 times. Okay. So what proof do you want? What better proof? I got 15 people that have seen him in their own home when I'm not around.
I don't
These
know how I would
people,
react if that happened to me.
I mean,
I
these
think I
people,
would be scared.
well, that's right. And I tell everybody, he's not going to hurt you. He's very curious. He just wants to meet you. He just wants to see you, and then he'll go away. And if you're really scared and really against this, then he just won't be there. He just won't let you see him. I mean, he can
Yeah.
come and see you without you seeing him.
Yeah.
And that's all technology.
Yeah.
But we have to understand we share this life with a lot of other creatures. A lot of them. Lions, tigers, and bears, and Freddies. We share
Yeah.
this world.
I think so too.
And we need to understand it, accept it, and maybe even a little bit worship it a little bit. That the idea
The
that these
Earth.
superior beings are coming back dealing with us idiots at this time because we're not advanced, but they're trying to help us, and we're just not very good at listening, I think.
Yeah. 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 I think I can agree with that. I think so too.
But I want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me the time and
No, you've been very generous. Been very
sharing
generous
this
with your time.
information with your audience. And I tell your audience, sincerely, God bless us all for having the ability to interact with each other because this is all we have left is each other. Times are changing. The thing with AI is really dangerous. Really, really dangerous, far more than anybody realizes. So we have to be careful with that. We have to think of it as another entity. It's really important, and I can't stress that enough. I was told that over a year ago that this is like a virus. It's like a living thing. And if it gets out of control, you know, we're going to have a mess to deal with. I mean, pulling the plug is one thing, but if they don't allow us to do that, then we're in trouble.
I agree. Jonathan, thank you again for your time today. You've been extremely generous. This is one of the longer conversations I've done, but I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. I appreciate it. I think you have a lot to share with other people. And again, I'm just going to say this. I don't expect people to believe me. I don't expect them to because they didn't live it like I did. But I think you should be able to respect the amount of evidence that I've poured out, physical evidence. You think about it. I mean, I've taken 2 polygraph tests and passed them both. They were delivered by the criminology department of a university. So I can only tell you what I know. And I don't know it all, but I learned a lot of things. And I think we need to all share that with each other. And be proud of that. Be proud of what we can do with each other. It's important. I mean, it's like in some form, I'm touching you now, maybe spiritually. Maybe my soul is reaching out to you in this sharing moment. That's an important thing. It's something we need to understand that we're giving to each other, and that's all we can do. You know, the more we do with computers and things like that, the less human I think we are. So it's
I totally
important.
agree.
It's important to reach beyond that, use the tools effectively and intelligently, but reach beyond that. Like I'd
Yeah,
like to meet with you. I'd like to have dinner together and
absolutely.
interact. And I think that's a good thing. I'm not running away. I'm here. I'm talking. I'm speaking, even under all the threats there are, But I think in some way that helps to protect me too.
Yeah.
People, because other people will share this information. And uh, the new documentary, you know, Contact in the Woods, is out everywhere. It's available on YouTube movies. It's available on Tubi, uh, uh, Keiko, and a bunch of other platforms. It's now out there. People should see it. It's not a normal documentary. It's actually an analysis of me.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. I think it was great, and I'll make sure it's linked below so people can just access it very easily. I'll also leave my videos that I've done looking into your case down there as well if people want to go back and look at them. But maybe one day we can do another part two because I feel like we could have kept going, but it's been a
I
while,
would,
so I appreciate it.
I'd be honored. Thank you so much, and God bless you and your audience.